Hey, so get this. Imagine waking up one morning in Victorian Britain. Totally normal day, the coal fire smoulders in the grate, soot clings to the curtains, and the city outside smells faintly of horse manure and industry. You've got a toothache that won't quit, or maybe nerves that just won't calm down. And here's the twist: you could walk into a pharmacy and buy a bottle of morphine syrup, a packet of opium-laced lozenges, or even cocaine drops for your gums. No prescription, no raised eyebrows. Just a polite nod from the chemist as he wrapped it up in brown paper. A world where everyday medicine blurred dangerously close to what we'd now call hard drugs, and where the line between healing and addiction was crossed almost casually. Before you drift off, do me a small favor and tap the like button and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim those lights, flip on a fan for that gentle background hum, and tuck yourself under the sheets. Let's pause for a second. So today, we're heading back to the Victorian era, a world of carriages and corsets, but also laudanum-laced teas and tonics that promised sweet relief at a terrible cost. Have you ever wondered how Victorians coped with stress before self-care meant 10 streaming services and a scented candle? What did they take when grief cut too deep, or when insomnia stretched for weeks? And most importantly, could you survive a day in Victorian Britain without accidentally overdosing on something sold as harmless medicine? Congratulations! You wake to the thin grey light of a Victorian dawn, a sky smudged by coal smoke, the air heavy with soot that clings to the curtains. The fire in the grate has long since died, leaving the room chill. You pull the quilt tighter, listening to the muffled clatter of carriage wheels on the cobblestones outside, the far-off cry of a newsboy calling out the headlines. The world is already awake, and it smells of ash, horse manure, and something sharp, something chemical. You step out into the street, boots crunching against grit and ice. Fog hangs low, mixing with chimney smoke until the buildings seem to blur into shadow. Just around the corner, the bell above the chemist's door rings with a dull jingle as you push inside. At once, the scent changes. Bitter powders, earthy roots, sharp spirits, rows upon rows of bottles line the shelves, glass gleaming in the dim light. Brown vials sealed with wax, tall jars filled with opalescent liquid, tiny boxes stacked with pills promising relief for every ill. The apothecary's shop feels almost sacred, though it hums with danger beneath the polished order. A counter separates you from the man in his apron, sleeves rolled up, spectacles low on his nose. He measures powders with care, the brass scales tilting delicately, weights clinking like coins, each little packet folded neatly, each bottle corked and tied with string. But you notice the labels: laudanum, paregoric, tincture of opium, and you realize that here, medicine and poison are one and the same. A woman enters behind you, shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders. She doesn't meet your eye. She asks quietly for her usual, "The draft, if you please," and the chemist nods knowingly. He reaches for a brown bottle without hesitation, filling it from a larger glass container. The liquid inside is thick and red, the color of iron rust. Laudanum, diluted opium in wine, bitter and sweet, the faithful companion of the weary. She takes the bottle with trembling hands, drops coins on the counter, and slips back into the fog. You linger, staring at the advertisements pasted along the wall. Bright prints show smiling families, calm infants, vigorous old men restored to health. Each product boasts miracles: pain banished, nerves soothed, strength renewed. Yet you know the truth. Each is laced with opium, morphine, or coca leaves, drugs that comfort, yes, but demand their price in silence and dependence. The chemist offers you a cordial for nerves, pouring a syrup into a small glass. It smells faintly of poppies and strong spirits. You sip, and it burns on the way down, warmth spreading through your chest, a fuzz settling across your mind. For a moment, the grey world outside seems softer, more distant, almost bearable. and you understand why so many stop here each morning before they face the day. You step back out into the street, bottle in hand, fog curling around your boots. The city is alive with smoke and noise, but beneath it runs another current, a quiet, steady hum of dependence. Behind every shuttered window, every tired face, there are bottles hidden in drawers, powders tucked into cupboards, syrups waiting on bedside tables. The Victorian morning begins not only with tea and bread, but with the pharmacy's touch, small comforts drawn from substances that promise relief while whispering chains around those who drink them. And as you walk, the weight of that bottle in your pocket reminds you, you too are part of this morning ritual. The day has only begun, and already the first dose is inside you. The city breathes it with you, one sip, one drop, one powder at a time. The kettle whistles faintly on the iron stove, steam curling into the cold kitchen air. You sit at a worn wooden table, the kind polished smooth by generations of elbows leaning heavy after long days. Outside the morning is still grey, the windows fogged with condensation, droplets running like tears down the glass. The fire smoulders weakly, not quite enough to chase the damp from the room. And there, on the table beside your cup, sits the small vial with its amber glow, the bottle of laudanum, the Victorian household's quiet confidant. The spoon trembles in your hand as you tip in just a few drops. Bitter and sharp, they darken the tea like ink bleeding into water. Sugar is added quickly, stirred until the granules vanish, trying to mask what everyone knows cannot truly be hidden. You lift the cup, the porcelain warm against your lips, and the first sip brings both comfort and unease. The tea is familiar, homely, steady, but the edge beneath it, the bitter trace of the poppy, presses through. It carries a weight that settles into your body before you've even finished the cup. You imagine countless others across the city doing the same. Mothers who stayed awake through the night with coughing children, their own nerves frayed, slipping a measure into their breakfast tea. Dock workers stiff with pain after lifting cargo until their backs screamed, soothing themselves with a dose before the day begins again. Gentlemen in parlours, their conversations fueled by cups laced not only with milk and sugar, but with opium's heavy sweetness. It is ordinary, it is routine, it is the teacup of Victorian Britain. The house grows quieter as the laudanum takes its hold. The dull ache in your head softens, the knot in your stomach loosens. The troubles pressing in, the bills on the mantel, the soot creeping into every corner, the child's cough in the next room fade to the background. Your gaze drifts to the patterned wallpaper, its flowers curling into strange shapes. Shadows move differently now, slower, softer. The world seems to breathe with you, as though the tea has blurred the edges of reality, just enough to make the day less cruel. Across town, in drawing rooms lined with velvet curtains, writers and poets cradle their cups with the same secret ingredient. They call it inspiration, the opium gently lifting them into states of dream where words flow like water. In smaller cottages, wives use it to chase away grief, each swallow a way to soften the sharp edges of loss. The chemists sell it with barely a word, and no one questions, for in this age, opium is as much a part of daily life as coal smoke or bread. You set your cup down, half finished, though the warmth lingers in your chest. Your hands no longer tremble. The room feels softer, though no fire has been stoked, and the day ahead seems just a little easier to bear. But there's a whisper inside you, faint and steady, reminding you that this ease comes at a cost. The teacup has been emptied, but it will ask for more. And tomorrow morning, you know, your hand will reach for the vial again before the kettle has even boiled. The ritual is simple, the comfort is real. And so begins another day with opium in the teacup. The night has been restless. A child's cough rattled through the narrow house, thin walls carrying each sound from one room to another. The fire burned low, the blankets were drawn tight, but nothing could hush the rasping fits that rose and fell until dawn. Now, in the pale morning light, you move quietly across the kitchen floor, the boards creaking under your steps. On the shelf above the stove sits a bottle, its label promising calm, rest, and silence paregoric. Tincture of opium, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. Different names, but all whispering the same promise. The cork comes loose with a soft pull. The liquid glints dark amber, sweetened and thick. The spoon you use is small, hardly more than a teaspoon, yet you know it carries a world of power within it. You measure carefully, though the instructions are vague, a spoonful for infants, more for older children. The syrup smells faintly of spice, almost pleasant, like something meant for comfort. And perhaps it, island. The child sits slumped in the wooden chair, cheeks flushed, eyes half-lidded from exhaustion. You tip the spoon gently to their lips, coaxing them to swallow. The syrup clings thickly, sticky against the tongue, its sweetness hiding the bitter opium beneath. A cough tries to rise but falters, caught in the heavy warmth spreading through their small body. The child sighs, a sound soft as drifting snow, and leans back, eyelids closing fully at last. The silence that follows feels almost holy. After nights of sleeplessness, the quiet is a balm for everyone in the house. Parents exhale, shoulders loosening. The older children, who had lain awake through the racket, drift back into slumber. Even the walls seem to settle, their echoes hushed. You sit beside the chair, listening to the child's breath even out, long and slow. The room, once filled with coughs and cries, is finally still. But beneath the peace lingers a shadow. You know, though you push the thought aside, that this silence is not natural. It has been bought with drops of opium, the same poppy resin that fuels laudanum and morphine. What soothes also dulls, what comforts also numbs. The child's chest rises and falls evenly now, but it is a rhythm that feels borrowed from the same source that keeps mothers calm, that fuels poets' dreams, that binds the poor to their daily drafts. You glance at the bottle, still half full, its label cheery and confident. Victorian pharmacies sold these syrups as blessings, remedies for fretful nights and restless children. Advertisements called them lifesavers for weary parents, promising to ease colic, teething, coughs and fevers alike. The truth, though rarely spoken aloud, was that countless children were silenced forever by doses too heavy, little lungs unable to rise again after so much opium. The child in the chair stirs faintly, a hand twitching, then stills once more. You tuck the blanket around them, smoothing their hair, your own eyes stinging with exhaustion. Relief and guilt mingle inside you like the syrup itself, sweet, dark, impossible to separate. The house remains hushed, but the silence feels different now, heavy with the weight of what it took to achieve it. Outside, the city stirs awake, chimneys coughing smoke into the sky, carts rattling down cobbled lanes, but within these four walls, time slows. You sit in the quiet, one hand on the child's arm, listening, waiting, both comforted and unsettled by the syrup's power. And though the cough is gone, a deeper question lingers in the silence. How much of this peace can be trusted? Your tooth has been aching for days. It throbs like a drum inside your skull, each pulse sharper than the last, as though tiny hammers strike from within. Sleep has been shallow, broken by pain, and even the comfort of tea no longer soothes. This morning, though, you find yourself standing once again before the chemist's counter, the rows of bottles gleaming faintly in the gaslight. The air is sharp with spirits, vinegar, and camphor, but one vial in particular catches your eye, small, neat, and labeled with bold black letters: cocaine toothache drops. The chemist speaks as if he were offering nothing more dangerous than peppermint lozenges. He assures you it works quickly, with no ill aftertaste, a marvel of modern science. The Victorians, after all, delight in progress, new machines, new medicines, new wonders that promise to ease life's endless burdens. You pay your coins, and he slides the small vial across the counter. The liquid inside shimmers clear and thin, no darker than water, no more threatening than rain. Back at home, you sit by the window, the glass fogged with condensation, the streets outside blurred by drizzle. You uncork the vial. The smell is faint, almost absent, nothing to hint at its hidden strength. The tiny dropper glints in the light as you raise it, tilting your head back, lips parted. You let a few drops fall against the swollen gum. The liquid is cool, sharp as frost, and then suddenly numb. The pain, so constant you had nearly forgotten what life without it felt like, is gone in an instant. It is as though the tooth has been erased, the ache dissolved into air. You sit in stunned silence, blinking, your jaw slack. Relief sweeps through you, dizzying, almost intoxicating. The throbbing that had ruled your nights and clouded your days has vanished, leaving behind a strange emptiness. You run your tongue over the place where the pain had been, marveling at the absence, as though the cocaine had carved away not only the ache, but the memory of suffering itself. It is easy to understand, then, why these little vials sit proudly in shop windows, why advertisements paint them as miracles for both children and adults. A fretful infant, soothed by a few drops. A laborer with rotten teeth, able to work again. A weary housewife, freed from the burden of pain that no herbal poultice could touch. Cocaine, they whisper, is progress in a bottle. Yet as the minutes pass, the numbness spreads oddly, tingling along your jaw, humming faintly in your temples. Your heart quickens. There is a brightness in the room that was not there before, as if the drizzle outside has turned to sudden Sunday. You feel awake too, awake, your body alight with restless energy. The pain is gone, but in its place lies something sharper, something buzzing, a wakefulness that does not sit still. You set the vial back on the table, though your eyes keep returning to it. Such a small thing, so harmless in appearance, yet carrying power enough to remake your body's rhythm. You know you will reach for it again. Not only when the tooth flares, but when the fatigue of the day weighs too heavily, when the shadows in the house seem too thick. Outside, the drizzle continues, but you sit by the window with your jaw no longer throbbing, your mind alert, your hands tapping restlessly against the wood. The vial gleams beside your teacup, quiet and patient. One drop has banished agony. One more, you think, could make the day brighter still. And so the cocaine drop becomes not just a cure for pain, but a companion, waiting, always within reach. Evening settles slow across the house, the last light dimming behind sooty curtains, the lamps lit with a faint hiss of gas. The air smells of coal dust and boiled cabbage, heavy and close, and every corner seems tired. This is the hour when the day loosens its grip, when work clothes are folded away, when boots rest by the hearth. And for many, this is the moment for the bottle, small, brown, and constant. The laudanum vial waits quietly in the drawer, as it always does, a nightly companion. You draw it out, the glass cool in your hand, the cork faintly stained from use. The liquid within gleams red-brown, rich as blood, dark as molasses. Its scent rises the moment the stopper is pulled, bitter, metallic, with a sweetness lurking beneath, the ghost of wine and poppy mingled together. The spoon lies beside the cup, waiting. You measure carefully, though not too carefully. Habit has taught you the right weight, the right sound of the liquid falling. Drop by drop, the laudanum pools in the tea, swirling slowly until the whole cup carries the faint edge of opium. The first sip burns slightly, bitter, even through the sugar. But then comes the warmth, deep, spreading, uncoiling inside the chest and sinking into the bones. The knots of worry that held all day begin to loosen. The sting of old grief, the sharpness of fatigue, the ache of joints worked too hard all blur, softening at the edges. The room itself seems to change with you. The ticking of the clock slows. The shadows on the wall lean heavier. The very air thickens, quiet, patient, forgiving. Across Victorian Britain, countless hands lift cups like this each evening. Mothers weary from tending children sip in silence, the day's labor slipping away into dreamlike calm. Gentlemen with nerves frayed from business pour a dose into wine, convincing themselves it sharpens thought while it erases sharpness entirely. Writers cradle their cups, chasing visions into pages, the poppies whisper guiding their pens. Even the poor, if they can spare the coin, Find a measure of rest from the endless hunger and toil in this bitter sweetness. Laudanum is not taken in haste. It is a ritual, a rhythm. The cork pulled, the spoon filled, the liquid stirred, the first swallow braced for. It becomes part of the household fabric, as ordinary as bread and coal, yet carrying within it a power that bends the body and the mind. What begins as comfort soon becomes necessity. What once was a choice is now an expectation, the hand reaching for the bottle at the same hour, as if pulled by gravity. You finish your cup, fingers warm, eyes heavy. The world around you fades to a softer shape. The pain that lived in your body all day has gone quiet, as if lulled into sleep. But you know it will return, just as surely as the bottle will call again tomorrow. Still, for this moment, you let yourself sink into the calm, the silence filling every corner. The laudanum ritual is complete, and as the night deepens, you drift into its embrace, the poppy's hand guiding you gently, silently, further from the day you once carried. The morning is quiet, almost unnaturally so. A thin mist presses against the window panes, blurring the rooftops and chimneys beyond. Inside, the fire burns low, the room heavy with stillness. On the table rests an unassuming vial, its contents dark and glistening laudanum again, though today it is taken not as medicine but as indulgence. You measure more than usual, pouring it into a glass of water. The liquid swirls, bitter tendrils curling like smoke in the cup. One swallow, then another, and the day begins to tilt. At first, nothing seems different. The chair creaks the same way, the clock ticks with the same patient rhythm, but then, slowly, the edges soften. The weight of the room loosens its hold. Shadows deepen and stretch, and the ordinary grows strange. You sit back, the taste still lingering on your tongue, and feel the world shift, as though the air itself carries a secret you are just now allowed to hear. Your eyes drift closed, and the daydream unfurls. Streets that were once grimy and grey now shine with a strange radiance. Gas lamps glow like golden suns, their halos shimmering. The cobblestones glisten as though freshly washed by rain, each stone alive with colour. The sound of horses' hooves becomes musical, rhythmic, almost like drums leading a procession you cannot see. The city that once choked with soot and smoke suddenly feels vast, dreamlike, endless. This is the world that opium builds, not the harsh Britain of factories and endless toil, but a softer reflection, a place where imagination stretches as wide as the sky. In this haze, you walk without moving, drifting through visions that rise and fall like tides. You see gardens blooming out of stone, rivers gliding through narrow alleys, faces of strangers glowing with kindness, as though suffering itself had been forgotten. Yet even in this dream, there are shadows. The brightness carries weight, an undertone of dread. Behind the beauty, you sense something hollow. The streets never truly end, they fold back into themselves. The laughter you hear echoes too long, thinning into something sharp. The figures you pass in this vision, poets, lovers, pale women leaning at windows, look at you with eyes that know too much, as if they too have swallowed from the same vial and cannot return. You stir in your chair, half waking, half still lost. The room around you is unchanged, yet it no longer feels entirely real. The wallpaper's flowers twist and curl, shifting when you aren't looking. The clock's hands creep forward sluggishly, their motion hypnotic. You feel heavy and light all at once, your body rooted, while your mind drifts far beyond the walls. This is what Thomas de Quincey once wrote of. The strange exaltation of the opium eater, dreams vast as empires, visions brighter than daylight, but bought with a darkness that waits patiently for its due. For now, though, you let the dream carry you. You sink into it as though into deep water, knowing you will surface eventually, but reluctant to rise too soon. The day passes unnoticed. The fire dies to ash, the mist outside thickens to fog, but still you drift, caught between waking and sleep. And when at last you open your eyes fully, the vial still glistens on the table, waiting. The daydream fades, but the promise of its return lingers, whispering that tomorrow, or perhaps tonight, you will reach again for the dark liquid and let the poppy lead you back into its shimmering, haunted world. The lamps burn low, casting a weak yellow glow across the bedroom walls. The fire in the grate has collapsed into embers, their warmth fading with each passing hour. The city outside has gone still, the clatter of carriage wheels and the cries of newsboys swallowed by fog and distance, yet sleep will not come. You lie restless beneath the heavy quilt, body weary but mind caught in endless turns of thought. The cough of a neighbor echoes faintly through the thin plaster walls, and the clock on the mantel ticks too loudly, every second reminding you that morning draws closer. On the bedside table sits a small glass vial, its label handwritten in neat, looping script, chloral hydrate. The doctor had called it a sleep draught, a modern miracle for sleepless nights. Safer, he said, than opium. You pull the cork, the smell sharp and chemical, like something drawn from a laboratory rather than a garden. Mixed into a glass of sweetened water, it looks harmless enough, barely cloudy, with no hint of the power it carries. The first swallow is bitter, metallic, the taste clinging to your tongue. You lie back, pulling the blanket tight around your shoulders, waiting for the draught to work. At first, nothing changes. The clock still ticks, your body still fidgets, your breath still catches on the rise of anxious thought. But then, slowly, a heaviness creeps into your limbs. Your eyelids grow thick, heavy as lead. The ceiling above you sways gently, as if the house itself were rocking on unseen waves. You close your eyes, and the world drifts. Time loosens. Thoughts dissolve before they can form. The walls breathe, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of your pulse. The city, the worries, the noise of life all fade, replaced by the soft, dreamlike pull of chloral hydrate. You sink into it as if into deep water, the edges of your body blurring until only the steady beat of your heart remains. It is not the soft dream of opium, nor the bright sharpness of cocaine. This is different, darker, more absolute. A blankness that feels both like peace and like drowning. The bed holds you as though you are part of it, the quilt pressing down with a weight that is both comforting and suffocating. The last thing you hear is the slowing tick of the clock, then silence. Victorian nights across the country are filled with this silence. Patients in hospitals, their minds too restless for rest, are given draughts by careful nurses. Mothers at home, worn thin by grief or sickness, sip their measures before lying down. Even men of science, unable to quiet their thoughts, surrender themselves to the sleep that chloral hydrate promises. The newspapers call it progress and end to insomnia, a cure for worry. But progress has shadows. Some never wake from these nights. Some wake trembling with pounding hearts and dry mouths, already reaching for the vial again. You wake late, the light already grey at the window, your body heavy, your mind fogged. The clock on the mantel has run far ahead of you, and the fire is nothing but cold ash. You remember little of the night before, only the swallowing, the sinking, the darkness that followed. The vial still sits on the table, its cloudy liquid waiting patiently, ready to carry you once more into its deep, heavy silence. And as you rise, slow and unsteady, you know you will return to it. For in this age, even sleep itself has become something bought and bottled, poured into a glass and swallowed whole. Chloral hydrate has given you rest, but at a cost you cannot yet measure. The parlor glows with lamplight, curtains drawn against the fog pressing at the windows. Coal smoke clings to the air, mingling with the faint perfume of flowers arranged on the mantel. Chairs are gathered in a circle, voices low with laughter, the scrape of boots against the polished floor. It is not tea being poured tonight, nor sherry, nor claret. On the small table in the center rests a shallow dish, cloth folded neatly beside it, and a bottle half filled with a clear, sharp-smelling liquid, ether. You watch as one of the young men, cheeks flushed with anticipation, dips the cloth into the dish until it soaks. He lifts it quickly, pressing it to his face with a practiced hand. His shoulders rise, then shudder as the vapor fills his lungs. A strange sound escapes him, part cough, part laugh, and then his eyes glaze. He lowers the cloth, grinning wide, and stumbles back into the armchair, as if the world has suddenly gone softer. The others cheer, their laughter spilling into the heavy room, and already another hand reaches for the cloth. The odor spreads quickly, sharp and chemical, cutting through perfume and coal smoke alike. It stings your nose, unnatural, almost sweet, almost metallic. The cloth passes from one to another, each eager to press it close, each eager for the sudden rush. Some cough, eyes watering, but then the dizziness takes them, and they laugh too loudly, their movements loose, careless. The parlor becomes a theater of unsteady joy. You take your turn. The cloth is damp, cool against your skin. The vapor rushes up, burning your throat, forcing your chest to heave. For a moment you think you cannot bear it, but then a wave breaks inside your head, light, dizzying, quick. The room tilts. The lamplight flares brighter, then dims, then seems to pulse in time with your racing heart. You lower the cloth and stumble, laughter bursting from you unbidden. The others laugh too, and suddenly the sound is contagious, filling the parlor until it feels like the whole house is laughing with you. Time loses its order. Minutes stretch, collapse, vanish. Someone sings a fragment of a song, forgetting the words halfway through. Another recites a line of poetry and collapses into giggles. The women cover their mouths as they laugh, cheeks red, eyes glimmering, propriety slipping with each breath of ether. For a while the world outside does not exist, the grim streets, the endless labor, the sickness pressing at every door. In here there is only laughter, dizziness, and the sweet unreality of chemical dreams. Yet beneath the laughter lurks a strangeness. One man slumps too far in his chair, his hand limp, the cloth falling to the floor. For a moment no one notices, the others too caught in their joy. When at last he stirs, groggy but waking, relief sweeps the room, though no one speaks of the danger. The bottle remains on the table, the cloth soaked again, the ritual continuing as if nothing had happened. You sit back, head spinning, vision blurred at the edges. The laughter grows distant, the lamplight softer, the air thick with the lingering scent of ether. You close your eyes and drift, caught between waking and sleep, between joy and unease. And when the cloth is pressed into another eager hand, you know this night will be remembered not for conversation or music, but for the strange, shimmering escape found in the bottle on the table, the ether that turned an ordinary parlor into a dream. The evening stretches long, the lamps glowing faintly in their glass chimneys, shadows pooling at the corners of the drawing room. The air is heavy with coal smoke and damp wool, yet in the center of the table sits something that draws every eye, a small glass vial, stoppered tight, its contents clear as spring water. Chloroform, someone whispers, the word carrying both awe and thrill. Once meant for surgeons' tables and sick rooms, it has slipped quietly into parlors and gatherings, carried not just for medicine, but for curiosity. The host, a gentleman with whiskers groomed too neatly, lifts the vial between thumb and finger, letting the lamplight catch on the liquid inside. He speaks of Edinburgh doctors, of the marvel of painless surgeries, of how Queen Victoria herself inhaled it during childbirth. His voice swells with pride as if the presence of this vial in his home makes him part of progress itself. The others lean forward, eyes wide, breath held, the boundary between science and play already blurring. A square of linen is unfolded, folded again, and the cork eased free. At once the sharp, sweet odor drifts into the room, startlingly strong, like something halfway between honey and metal. The host pours a measure onto the cloth, careful not to spill, and then, with theatrical flourish, presses it to his face. A hush falls. For a moment he stands upright, shoulders stiff, then his body softens, his eyelids flutter, his knees bend, and laughter bursts out of him as he sways. He lowers the cloth, eyes glazed, grinning like a boy caught in mischief. The others clap, some nervously, some with delight. One by one, the cloth passes around. A young woman takes it next, pressing it gingerly to her lips and nose. Her breath hitches at the strength of the vapor, yet curiosity wins. Her eyes widen, then roll faintly, her head tipping back with a sigh that trembles into giggles. She pulls the cloth away, cheeks flushed, as if she has been kissed by the strange invisible hand of the liquid. When your turn comes, the cloth feels damp, cool against your skin. The smell is overpowering, sweet and suffocating all at once. You breathe in and feel the world tilt. A warmth spreads through your body, not like wine, not like laudanum, but sharper, quicker, as though your very bones are humming. The lamplight grows haloed, every sound both distant and too loud, the tick of the mantel clock, the rustle of skirts, the laughter spilling into sudden silence. For a moment, you are nowhere, suspended in a blank haze, until the cloth is pulled gently from your hand and another eager guest takes it. The room grows livelier, louder. Laughter rings against the walls. Chairs scrape as people stumble and sway, the air thick with the scent of chloroform. Yet beneath the mirth, unease coils. Someone lingers too long with the cloth, slumping against the sofa, their breath shallow, their skin pale. Gasps ripple through the gathering until at last they stir, blinking, dazed, and the relief is loud but uneasy. Still, the cloth is soaked anew, passed again, the danger forgotten as quickly as it appeared. You sit, heart still racing, vision soft, the odor clinging to your hair and clothes. Outside, the fog presses against the glass, the city unaware of the strange experiments unfolding in this room. What began as medicine has become entertainment, a parlor trick for the curious and the bold. And as the vial sits gleaming under lamplight, you sense that this will not be the last night it is brought out. For curiosity, once tasted, always asks for more. The night has been long, filled with the thin wails of an infant that refuse to quiet. The cradle creaks as it rocks, the small bundle inside red-faced, fists clenched tight, lungs roar with crying. The mother's eyes are hollow with exhaustion, dark crescents beneath them. The father paces the narrow floorboards, his boots worn smooth from worry. In the corner, a candle burns low, dripping wax onto the saucer, its flame trembling as though it too were weary of the endless noise. On the mantel rests a bottle, its label printed in bold, reassuring letters, Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup. The glass glows amber in the flickering light, the liquid thick and sweet. Advertisements promised relief for colic, for teething, for coughs and fevers. The remedy of choice for countless households, it is said to quiet the most fretful child with just a spoonful. The mother's hand hesitates as she reaches for it, torn between love and desperation. But fatigue tips the balance. She unstoppers the bottle, and the sharp, sweet scent of opium drifts into the room. A teaspoon clinks against the glass, drawing up a measure. The syrup pours thickly, coating the spoon in a sticky sheen. She crouches by the cradle, her voice soft, coaxing the child's lips open. The baby swallows reflexively, eyes still wet with tears. The syrup clings to its tongue, sugared and strong, masking the bitterness of the drug it carries. The crying falters, breaks into a whimper, then subsides into soft hiccups. Within minutes, the small body grows heavy, eyelids drooping, breath slowing. Silence falls over the room like a blanket. The mother exhales, shoulders sagging with relief. The father sinks into a chair, pressing his hands to his face, finally able to rest. The house itself seems to sigh, the walls no longer echoing with cries, the candle flame steadying as though soothed by the quiet. Outside, the street is dark, the world oblivious to the tiny miracle wrought by a spoonful of syrup. But beneath the peace lies something heavier. The child's sleep is too deep, too sudden. The chest rises and falls in slow, syrup-laden rhythm. The little fingers twitch once, then curl still. Parents in countless homes convince themselves this silence is healing, that the syrup is a gift. Yet in hushed corners of hospitals and in the whispers of midwives, the truth is known, too much, and the child never wakes. The same opium that calms can also still life itself. The mother tucks the blanket around the baby, smoothing its hair with tender hands, her heart lighter at last. She cannot see the danger, not now, not tonight. All she feels is the gift of quiet, the chance to close her own eyes, if only for a few hours. The bottle remains on the mantel, its amber glow steady, patient, ready to be called upon again. The room is silent, too silent. The tick of the clock fills the air where cries once were, each second a reminder of the fragile balance between comfort and risk. And as the parents drift into sleep, the syrup works on in the cradle, binding the night in its heavy embrace, promising peace but carrying shadows in every drop. The day has been long, the damp chill of the city sinking deep into your bones. By evening, the fire in the hearth gives off little more than a dim glow, its warmth swallowed by drafty walls. Your body aches, your chest feels heavy, and your mind will not settle. The doctor has come and gone, his black bag clinking with glass, his words delivered with certainty, a measure of brandy before bed. For the nerves, for the lungs, for the blood itself. He speaks as though alcohol were not just drink but cure, as though healing itself might be poured from a bottle. On the table stands a decanter, the amber liquid catching the lamplight like molten gold. The smell rises the moment the stopper is pulled, rich, sharp, and heavy, the scent of warmth promised. You pour a glass, the liquid swirling slow against the sides, and raise it to your lips. The burn is immediate, searing down your throat, spreading heat through your chest and belly. The chill recedes, the ache dulls, and a faint lightness settles into your head. It feels less like medicine and more like escape. Victorian doctors prescribed alcohol for nearly everything: brandy for fainting spells, stout for weakness, port wine for blood loss, whiskey for coughs. A woman grieving a lost child might be told to sip sherry each night until sleep returned. A man wasted by tuberculosis might be ordered to drink porter with every meal. Children, too, were not spared small measures of ale given to strengthen their growth, hot toddies pressed into tiny hands to ease winter colds. In every class, in every corner of Britain, alcohol was the cure that never questioned itself. You sip again, and the room softens. The tick of the clock fades, the rattle in your chest feels easier. For a moment, you believe the doctor's words that health lies in this glass, that strength can be swallowed. And perhaps, for a while, it is true. Your cheeks flush, your limbs loosen, the heaviness inside you lessens. Around you, families in countless houses are doing the same. Fathers pouring stout to mend tired muscles, mothers sipping wine for female complaints, invalids mixing whiskey into warm milk, believing each swallow pushes sickness further away. But the cure carries its own cost. Some rise from their chairs less steady, their tongues looser, their tempers sharpened. Some cannot sleep without their nightly glass, their bodies already leaning toward dependence. Behind closed doors, quiet tragedies unfold, families broken not by disease but by the very remedy meant to prevent it. Still, the bottles remain on tables and mantels, trusted more than herbs, more than prayers, more than anything else doctors might bring. You finish the glass and set it aside, the warmth lingering, your head heavy but calmer. The fire has burned low, the lamp flickers, the house sighs into silence. For tonight, you believe you are stronger, your nerves soothed, your body steadied. The decanter gleams on the table, a silent promise that tomorrow, should the aches return, medicine waits in liquid form. And so, in the dim quiet of the Victorian night, alcohol remains not merely a drink, but a ritual of healing, its shadow hidden behind the glow of the glass. The rain patters steady against the window, a soft drumming that seeps into the silence of the parlor. The lamps glow low, their light trembling across wallpaper patterned with faded flowers. On the table rests a polished case, its hinges gleaming faintly in the firelight. When you open it, the contents glimmer like tools of both science and sorcery. A slender glass syringe, its barrel etched with fine lines, and a set of steel needles, each sharp as a whisper. This is no common draught in a teacup, no syrup poured from a bottle. This is the new marvel of medicine, the morphine needle. You draw the vial close, its liquid clear, its label stamped with the authority of the chemist's hand. The cork pulls free, releasing a faint medicinal scent, neither sweet nor bitter, simply clean and cold. With careful fingers, you fit the needle to the syringe and draw the plunger back. The liquid rises smooth and steady, filling the glass barrel until it gleams like quicksilver in the dim light. Every movement feels deliberate, ritualistic. Your sleeve is rolled to the elbow. The vein in your arm rises faintly, bluish beneath pale skin. The needle pricks, sharp but brief, and then the liquid flows inward. The pain of the puncture vanishes in an instant, drowned beneath the flood of warmth that spreads from the vein to every limb. It is not the gentle blur of laudanum, not the fog of chloral, not the dizzy laughter of ether. This is sharper, swifter, a rush that seizes your body and stills it at once. Your breath eases, the aches that gnawed at your bones dissolve. The restless clamor of your thoughts quiets, replaced by a serene silence that feels almost holy. You lean back in the chair, the syringe resting now on the table beside you, its task complete. The firelight glows brighter, the rain outside becomes a lullaby. The world itself softens into something tender, forgiving. Doctors praised this miracle when it first appeared: relief for soldiers torn by battle wounds, comfort for patients racked by consumption, salvation for the sleepless and the suffering. They called it progress, the precision of a needle delivering medicine directly into the blood. And yet, in the hush of private rooms, men and women alike began to discover something more. The needle did not only banish pain, it offered a serenity so profound that soon the body longed for it, asked for it, could not sleep or wake without it. You look at your arm, at the tiny red dot where the needle slipped in. Such a small mark, so easy to hide beneath a cuff, no one would know. And tomorrow, when the ache returns, when the world feels heavy again, the case will be waiting. The syringe will gleam once more, the vial will pour its promise, and your body will sink again into that sweet, untroubled silence. For now, though, you close your eyes. The morphine hums in your blood, warm and deep. The rain continues its steady song, the fire flickers, the house exhales, and you, weightless in the chair, drift into a night where pain cannot reach you, lulled into stillness by the silver touch of the needle. The morning light is pale, filtered weakly through soot-streaked glass. A chill lingers in the room, though the small mirror on the vanity reflects something warmer: your own face, eyes still tired, skin drawn with shadows. On the table beside the mirror sits a bottle, delicate and elegant, its contents faintly cloudy, its label promising beauty. It is arsenic, though the word does not ring with danger here. Instead, it whispers of pale complexions, of smooth skin untouched by blemish, of the delicate porcelain look admired in every Victorian portrait. You uncork the bottle, the faint chemical scent sharp, almost metallic. The instructions are simple: a drop diluted in water, taken each morning to purify the complexion, to lighten the skin. Some apply it in creams, others sip it as a tonic. The logic is simple to those who sell it. What whitens cloth, what cleanses metal, can cleanse the body too. You hesitate, the liquid shimmering faintly in the glass, then raise it to your lips. It tastes bitter, burning slightly as it slides down, leaving behind both unease and anticipation. The mirror waits, reflecting not only your face but your hopes. You lean closer, fingertips tracing the curve of your cheek. The magazines call pale skin the mark of refinement, untouched by the sun that darkens laborers in fields and factories. Arsenic promises to hold you above them, to set you apart. The flush of health is not what is sought here. Beauty, in the Victorian sense, means the absence of color, the ghostly glow of purity. In drawing rooms across the city, women do the same each morning. They whisper to one another of secret recipes, of powders and lotions, of arsenic wafers sold in smart little boxes. Men, too, chase its promises, believing it strengthens vigor even as it hollows the body. Chemists sell it freely, as though it were no more dangerous than sugar, no more suspect than tea. Advertisements display elegant ladies gazing into mirrors, their skin pale as moonlight, with no mention of the price that pale glow demands. As the day passes, you feel the first effects. A flutter in the stomach, a faint chill in the fingertips, a sharpness behind the eyes. You tell yourself it is nothing, that beauty requires endurance, that the poison's sting is simply the price of transformation. And when you look again into the mirror that evening, perhaps your skin does seem smoother, your face a little more refined in the lamplight. The reflection soothes you, even as your body trembles faintly beneath your clothes. But the mirror is a liar. It does not show the weakness that grows in your limbs, the slow hollowing of strength. It does not reveal the way arsenic gathers inside you, drop by drop, weaving sickness into your veins. Tonight, you smile faintly at the pale glow that greets you, convincing yourself the ritual is worth it. Tomorrow, the bottle will be waiting, patient and merciless. For now, you set it carefully back on the table, the mirror reflecting both your face and the glass that holds your fate. The candle burns low, the room dims, and you lie down with the bitter taste still clinging to your tongue. Beauty has been swallowed, but so too has the shadow that walks with it, unseen, beneath the skin. The street is alive with noise. Wheels rattle over cobblestones, hawkers call their wares, and the air is thick with the mingled scents of coal smoke, damp straw, and boiled sweets. But louder than all else are the cries of the vendors lined along a stretch of stalls known as Patent Medicines Row. Here, every table gleams with bottles and boxes, their labels bright as carnival posters, each one promising miracles in print. You pause before a stand draped in banners. "Cure for consumption," the sign shouts in bold red letters. Beneath it, rows of tall glass bottles stand like soldiers, filled with syrup the color of molasses. The seller waves his arms theatrically, his voice booming as he swears his potion has saved hundreds. Around you, people lean closer, coins already in hand. The cough of a sick child rises from the crowd, and the mother's eyes fix hungrily on the bottle. The vendor sees it too, his pitch sharpening, his hand outstretched with a smile. Next stall, another miracle. Small tins labeled for nervous disorders, a cure for trembling hands, sleepless nights, and broken hearts. You glance at the ingredients listed in tiny print: opium tincture, coca extract, alcohol. Each tin promises relief, and perhaps it delivers for a while. But you know the truth whispered in alleys and behind chemist counters. The relief carries chains, drawing customers back again and again. Pockets empty, bodies weakened, yet thirsting for more. The noise grows louder as you walk. "Dr. Bateman's pectoral drops," cries one man, lifting a bottle high, the liquid glowing in the light. Another hawks, "Chlorodyne cures everything from colic to cholera." A boy hands out leaflets showing smiling children beside mothers pouring syrup into spoons. The drawings are too bright, too clean, too far from the truth of coughs that quiet into silence, of infants who never stir again. You stop at a stall where colored powders glitter in shallow bowls. The merchant whispers of secret herbs from the east, though the smell rising from the powder is unmistakably bitter quinine, perhaps laced with something stronger. His pitch is quieter, less theatrical, but his customers nod solemnly, desperate enough to buy hope in any form. As you drift through the row, your senses blur. The air is heavy with smells, sugar syrups, sharp alcohol, pungent oils. Labels shout in every direction, invigorates the blood, restores youth, banished pain. The sellers' voices rise like preachers at rival pulpits, each declaring salvation in a bottle. The crowd shuffles from one promise to the next, eyes wide, purses opening. For in this age, medicine is not measured in proof or science, but in spectacle, in persuasion, in hope, purchased with pennies. At last you step away, your pockets untouched, though the noise of the row still rings in your ears. Behind you, mothers clutch bottles to their chests, men tuck tins into their coats, and children trail after parents, hands sticky from syrup samples. the city swallows them, carrying both cure and curse into its homes. You walk on, the clamour fading, but you know you will hear it again tomorrow. For patent medicine's row never truly sleeps. It waits, its bottles gleaming, its voices ready, feeding on both the suffering and the hope of a people who long to believe that healing can be bought for a coin. The afternoon is heavy with mist, the kind that settles low and clings to the stone of the streets. The bells of a distant church mark the hour, their sound muffled by the fog. You step inside a small cafe, its windows steamed, its lamps glowing amber, and find yourself drawn to a row of bottles behind the counter. They gleam dark and inviting, labels printed in bold letters with names that speak of strength, energy, renewal. Among them sits a bottle of Vin Mariani, the most celebrated of tonic wines, its glass filled with liquid, the color of garnets held to the light. The proprietor pours a measure into a glass, the wine thick, rich, and faintly sweet. The aroma rises, grapes deepened with something sharper, earthier, a note that hints at distant coca leaves plucked from faraway hills. You sip slowly. The taste is smooth, warming, but the warmth is not only from the alcohol. Within minutes, a quiet vigor stirs inside you, a sharpening of thought, a quickening of pulse. Fatigue drains away like water down a gutter, replaced by a brightness that spreads through your limbs. Around you, the cafe hums with quiet ritual. Clerks in their neat coats sip their afternoon tonic, their ink-stained hands finally steady. A lady in dark gloves lifts her glass delicately, her eyes alight as though her grief has lifted, if only for the hour. At another table, two students debate philosophy, their voices quick, words tumbling faster than their thoughts can follow. The wine fuels them all, its coca leaves whispering energy into their veins, its alcohol cloaking the sharpness in velvet warmth. Advertisements had promised this very thing. Posters pasted along brick walls show radiant figures, their cheeks flushed with vigor, their eyes bright. Vin Mariani, they declare, restores vitality, lengthens life, sharpens the mind. Even the Pope has been quoted praising it, his image lending sacred weight to a bottle sold in shops from London to Paris. The Victorians, weary from smog, from long hours in counting houses and factories, clutch at its promise of energy, of endurance. Afternoon tea might soothe, but tonic wine invigorates. You take another sip, and the cafe seems to glow. The fog outside is no longer grey, but silver, the light through the steamed windows almost golden. Words come easily, your thoughts clearer, quicker, as if you could sit for hours and write, or walk for miles without tiring. It is easy to believe you have discovered something more than medicine, more than drink. It feels like progress in liquid form, bottled modernity itself. And yet, beneath the brightness, there is a faint unease. The quickening in your chest beats too hard, the edges of your thoughts too sharp. You know that, without the glass, the fatigue would return, heavier than before. The bottle sits on the counter, waiting, its garnet depths gleaming, its promise endless. One glass leads to another, one afternoon to the next, until the ritual becomes necessity. As you finish your glass, the cafe grows louder, laughter filling the air, spoons clinking, bottles uncorked again and again. Outside, the fog thickens, swallowing the city whole. Inside, tonic wine keeps the afternoon alive, carrying its patrons through the weariness of life with a sweetness that hides its chains. And as you leave, the echo of its warmth follows you into the mist, whispering that tomorrow's afternoon will bring you back again. The bell above the door jingles faintly as you step inside, and at once the air changes. The damp chill of the street is left behind, replaced by a dense, mingled scent that presses in on every breath. It is the smell of the apothecary, sharp spirits, bitter roots, crushed flowers, and powders ground fine. The room is narrow, shelves stretching high, each crowded with bottles and jars, corked and labeled in neat handwriting. Dust motes drift in the dim light, carrying with them that peculiar perfume, a blend of medicine, poison, and hope. The counter is worn smooth, polished by decades of elbows and coins. Behind it, the apothecary works in silence, scales tipping, glass stirring rods clinking softly. He wears a long apron stained faintly with powders, his fingers steady as he measures. Each movement adds to the smell that hangs in the shop. When corks are pulled, the air grows spiced with opium tinctures, sweet and heavy. When powders are ground, the scent sharpens, chalky and metallic. Spirits of ammonia sting the nose, while peppermint oil cools it again. It is overwhelming, yet oddly reassuring, an olfactory promise that every ailment has its cure, bottled and waiting. You wander between the shelves, reading the labels. Laudanum in neat rows, its reddish glow rich even in shadow. Small vials of morphine crystals, faintly glittering. Chlorodyne, its blend of chloroform and morphine, and cannabis sealed tight. Arsenic wafers in delicate boxes, their contents deadly yet sold as beauty. Each jar, each bottle, contributes to the strange chorus of scent, a symphony of remedies that together form the apothecary's identity. A woman enters, coughing into her handkerchief. The apothecary nods, already reaching for a jar of powders, mixing them into a draught. The smell of licorice root rises, masking bitterness, yet underneath lurks the darker tang of opium. The woman's eyes close as she inhales the scent, as if the medicine's comfort begins before it even touches her lips. Another customer follows, a weary man with trembling hands. For him, the apothecary uncorks a vial of tonic wine, and the smell of fermented grapes blends with the sweet edge of coca. The air grows thicker, richer, as though the shop itself is steeped in their needs. You pause by the counter, breathing deeply. There is something ancient about this smell, something that connects you to countless others who have stood where you stand. Mothers seeking rest for their children, laborers asking for strength in their bones, the sick, the grieving, the weary, all passing through, all leaving with bottles that smell faintly of salvation. Yet mingled in that perfume lies something darker, the scent of dependence, of remedies that soothe while binding tighter. The apothecary's smell is not only healing, it is warning, though few heed it. When you step outside again, the street air feels thin, washed clean of complexity. The smell clings to your clothes, following you into the fog like a shadow. You know it will linger, caught in your memory, the unmistakable perfume of a Victorian age where medicine and poison stood side by side, their scents entwined in the air of every apothecary's shop. The drawer sticks when you pull it open, wood swollen with damp, handles worn smooth from years of use. Inside, among folded handkerchiefs and old letters, lies the small brown bottle. Its glass is dull with fingerprints, its cork stained faintly dark from countless uses. The label, once clear, is faded now, the ink blurred by time and handling, yet you know exactly what it holds. The laudanum bottle waits, silent, secret, patient. You lift it carefully, the glass cool in your hand. The cork gives with a soft pop, releasing that familiar scent, sharp, bitter, heavy, with the breath of the poppy. It is a smell that both comforts and unsettles, a reminder of nights when pain or grief felt unbearable, when only this bottle offered escape. You pour a few drops into a cup, the liquid thick, its color like rusted wine. The sound it makes is small, almost shy, but it fills the quiet room with its weight. The first sip burns bitter on your tongue. You swallow quickly, shivering as the warmth spreads through your chest. The edges of the room soften. The clock ticks more slowly, the shadows deepen, the air itself feels gentler. The burden you carried all day, worry, ache, loneliness slips back a little, like a curtain being drawn. For a moment, you breathe easier. For a moment, you almost believe the bottle is a friend. But that is why it stays hidden. In homes across the city, bottles like this are tucked into drawers, pressed between linen, slipped behind books on shelves. They are not kept openly on mantles like tonic wine or soothing syrups. No, laudanum carries a shadow, one known too well by those who lean on it. It is used in silence, in secrecy, with the door closed and the curtains drawn. Mothers take it when grief will not let them rise from bed. Fathers sip when debts crowd too close. Daughters keep it hidden when their hearts are heavy, sons when their bodies ache from labor. The newspapers sometimes whisper of tragedies, overdoses, fainting fits, lives ended too early by a draught too strong. Doctors warn against careless use, yet prescribe it freely all the same. And so the bottles remain in homes, hidden but never far. You slip the bottle back into the drawer, covering it once more with handkerchiefs. You tell yourself it is only for bad nights, only when pain grows too sharp, only when the weight cannot be carried alone. But you know how easy it is for only sometimes to become every evening, how quickly the hand learns the path to the drawer in the dark. The room is quiet again. Outside, a cart rattles down the cobblestones, the driver's call faint in the fog. Inside, you feel the warmth of the laudanum settling, wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. The bottle rests hidden, waiting for the next time, as it always will. For in Victorian homes, comfort often lived in secret, tucked away in drawers, its glass dark and silent until called upon to soothe. The day begins before the Sunday smoke already rises from factory chimneys, and the streets echo with the shuffle of boots worn thin. In narrow rooms where whole families sleep side by side, the air is stale, heavy with damp. Hunger gnaws before the first shift has even begun, but there is little to eat. Bread gone hard, tea stretched thin, scraps barely enough to quiet the stomach. For the working poor, the body is asked to labor long after it has been emptied of strength, and so when food is scarce and rest impossible, another kind of sustenance takes its place, the draught. You see it passed hand to hand in the dim corners of taverns and alleys, small bottles of cheap gin, cloudy with impurities, bought for pennies, opiate pills pressed into rough paper, sold by the dozen. Bitter spirits poured into chipped cups, their fumes sharp enough to sting the eyes. They are not cures, not nourishment, but they dull the ache, soften the edge of hunger, and steady, trembling hands long enough to work another shift. A mother rocks her infant on her hip, her other hand clasping a bottle of soothing syrup she bought from a street seller. The child coughs weakly, then falls silent as the syrup does its work. In the silence, she exhales, her own nerves calmed by the knowledge she can leave for her shift without the sound of crying haunting her. For her, the draught is not luxury but survival, bought in desperation, used in faith. A laborer stumbles from the factory gates at dusk, his face black with soot, his shoulders bowed. His dinner is little more than crusts, yet his hand goes first to his pocket where a small vial waits. He tips a few drops into water, swallows, and feels the warmth spread through his body. His stomach is still empty, but the ache lessens. His exhaustion is not gone, but dulled. He can rise again tomorrow, and the day after, so long as the draught continues to flow. The chemists in poorer districts know this rhythm well. Their shops smell not of neat order, but of damp wood, sour spirits, and cheap laudanum cut thin to stretch supply. Children sent with pennies shuffle in, buying powders for their mothers, syrups for their fathers, sometimes even bottles for themselves. The apothecary measures quickly, no questions asked. The poor cannot afford questions. They can only afford silence in the night and strength enough to work at dawn. The draught carries a shadow, though. Some never rise from their stools in taverns, their eyes clouded, their breaths slow. Some children never wake from syrup-laden sleep. Some workers find their limbs trembling not from fatigue but from dependence, their bodies demanding the bottle before the day has even begun. But the choice is cruelly simple. Endure hunger, pain and sleeplessness, or buy one more draught to carry you through. As night falls, the narrow streets glow faintly with lamplight, fog curling around the doors of taverns and chemists alike. Inside, cups are lifted, pills swallowed, bottles drained. The poor drink not to forget entirely, but to survive another day, and when morning comes, they will return to their work with aching limbs and hollow stomachs, sustained by little more than the draught that dulled the suffering for a few fragile hours. The drawing room is hushed, velvet curtains drawn against the damp grey of the afternoon. A fire burns steadily in the grate, its warmth spilling across Persian rugs and polished wood. Silver trays gleam on the sideboard, holding decanters of port and crystal glasses half filled. But on the low table before the armchair rests something more precious than wine, a mahogany box, its brass lock polished, its compartments lined with velvet. Inside lie vials and bottles, each labelled in elegant script, each sealed with care. This is not the chemist's shelf in a crowded shop. This is the aristocrat's prescription. A butler brings the case forward, setting it before his master with practiced ease. The gentleman reclines, pale from a lingering ailment the doctors call nervous exhaustion. His hand trembles slightly as he lifts the first vial, a tincture of morphine, imported at great cost, its glass etched with foreign letters. He pours a measure into a fine crystal glass, adds a little water, and drinks with slow precision. The warmth spreads quickly, softening the tension that has ruled his body all day. He exhales, shoulders sinking into the chair, his eyes closing as relief takes hold. At the other end of the house, his wife sits at her dressing table, a delicate bottle of tonic wine in her hand. The label boasts coca leaves, praised in Paris salons and even recommended by doctors as a tonic for fatigue. She sips, her lips staining faintly red, and already feels her spirits lift. The weight of social obligations, the endless rounds of visits and correspondence, eases in her chest. She smooths her hair in the mirror, her cheeks flushed not with rouge, but with the stimulant's subtle spark. Children in the nursery, restless with colds, are given their own draughts. Patent remedies with elegant labels promise safety, their ingredients hidden behind Latin names. The nurse tips spoonfuls into small mouths, the syrup sweet, the effect swift. Soon the house is quiet, the children asleep, their breath deep and even. Upstairs the parents sip their tonics, the master his morphine, the mistress her coca wine. Each believes they are cared for, each believes their health preserved by the latest marvels of science. Doctors to the wealthy prescribe generously. They arrive in dark coats, carrying cases filled with gleaming instruments and bottles of foreign drugs, charging high fees for their counsel. To the aristocracy, illness is not endured but managed, softened by morphine, brightened by cocaine, steadied by chloral. Where the poor buy cheap laudanum by the penny, the rich drink imported tinctures, aged wines, and carefully compounded powders, their remedies as refined as their surroundings. Yet dependence does not distinguish between wealth and poverty. Behind the velvet curtains, the aristocrat's hand reaches more often for the box. The wife's afternoons grow longer, her glass refilled with tonic wine more than once. The nurse administers syrup nightly, the children accustomed to its taste. The luxury of prescription becomes a quiet necessity, hidden beneath fine manners and polished silver. The fire burns lower as the evening deepens. The butler clears the table, the mahogany box locked once more, its vials tucked neatly away. Yet everyone in the house knows it will be opened again tomorrow, and the next day after that. For in this home, as in so many others of wealth and rank, the true foundation of comfort lies not in gold or silk, but in the bottles that promise health, strength, and sleep, prescriptions whispered into the lives of the aristocracy until they can no longer imagine life without them. The sound of wheels on cobblestones announces his arrival before you ever see him. A painted cart rattles down the narrow street, its sides plastered with bold advertisements, curlicue letters, promising cures for every ailment. Under the Sunday, bright posters flutter in the breeze, headaches banished, nerves restored, consumption conquered. Children run alongside, pointing at the gaudy pictures, while weary adults step to their doors, drawn by curiosity, by hope, or by sheer desperation. The travelling chemist has come. He pulls the horse to a halt at the market square, where the crowd gathers quickly. The cart itself unfolds into a stall, shelves swinging out, boxes stacked high, bottles gleaming in the pale light. Each label shines with colour, deep reds, royal blues, gilded edges, as though artistry itself could heal. The air soon fills with a strange perfume, spirits, spices, syrupy sweetness, and the faint bite of chemicals. The chemist, dressed in a bright waistcoat and tall hat, mounts a small platform. With a voice trained to carry, he begins his sermon. He speaks of science and discovery, of wondrous ingredients carried from faraway lands. He flourishes a bottle of elixir of life, claiming it strengthens the blood and sharpens the mind. Another he calls Dr. Green's celebrated tonic, a cure for coughs, fevers, and even melancholy. Mothers listen intently, clutching infants whose cries pierce the air. Old men cough into handkerchiefs, eyes watery, longing for relief. Young laborers, exhausted from endless shifts, lean forward, tempted by promises of vigor. The chemist pours samples into small glasses, offering them freely. You taste one syrupy sweet, flavored with peppermint to hide the bitterness beneath. Heat rises in your chest, a warmth both pleasant and unsettling. It leaves you clearer, lighter, though you cannot ignore the faint buzzing in your veins. Around you, others nod approvingly, murmuring that they feel stronger already. Coins clink into the chemist's box, and bottles vanish into eager hands. Behind his smile, though, lies calculation. The bottles are filled with opium tinctures, coca extracts, chloroform blends, all diluted, all sweetened, yet strong enough to bind those who buy them. He knows the customers will return, will seek him out the next time his cart rattles into town. The poor cannot afford doctors, but they can spare a coin for hope, even if that hope comes wrapped in chains. As the sun lowers, the chemist packs his wares, folding the shelves back into the cart. The posters remain pasted to walls and doors, their colors bright against the soot-stained bricks, reminders of miracles promised. The crowd disperses, bottles tucked into baskets and pockets, already imagining the relief they will bring. The horse snorts, hooves striking sparks as the cart lurches forward, moving on to the next town, the next eager crowd. You watch him disappear into the fog, the sound of wheels fading into the distance. The square grows quiet, but the smell of syrup and spirits lingers, clinging to the air. Tonight, in dozens of homes, corks will be pulled, spoons filled, children dosed, and weary bodies soothed. The traveling chemist will sleep in another town, his box of coins heavier, his bottles fewer, while the city dreams under the spell of the cures he left behind. The kettle whistles faintly on the stove, its steam fogging the window where rain streaks down the glass. Afternoon settles slow, the house quiet but for the hiss of water and the ticking of the clock on the mantel. You set out the teapot, the cups, the sugar bowl. But beside them, waiting with equal importance, stands a small vial of tincture. Its label is plain, its glass dark, its contents sharp with the scent of the apothecary. Tea is a ritual in every Victorian home, poured carefully, stirred gently, sipped slowly. Yet in many houses it is not complete without the addition of medicine. A few drops of laudanum to soothe nerves, a measure of tincture of opium for pain, a splash of chlorodyne to still the cough that rattled through the night. The bitterness of these drugs is disguised easily by the warmth of the tea, the sweetness of sugar, the familiar comfort of porcelain cups. The drinker need not admit they are dosing themselves. They are, after all, simply taking tea. You watch as the amber liquid pours into your cup, steam curling upward. The spoon dips into the vial, the drops falling like ink into water. They swirl together, vanishing into the dark tea until they are indistinguishable, hidden beneath the ordinary ritual of the table. You stir, the spoon tapping gently against porcelain, the sound familiar, almost soothing. The first sip is bitter, the opium's edge breaking through sugar and milk, but it passes quickly, replaced by warmth that spreads through your chest and limbs. The ache in your back softens, the tightness in your chest loosens, the heavy mood that clung to you all morning lightens, as though the very steam rising from the cup carries it away. You lean back in your chair, the cup warm in your hands, and for a moment the world feels gentler. Across Britain, the same scene unfolds in parlours and kitchens. Women sip tea laced with tinctures to ease the strain of endless labour, their children already quieted by soothing syrups. Gentlemen returning from long hours in offices stir laudanum into their evening cup, seeking rest without the need to explain fatigue. Even gatherings among friends carry the hidden additions, tinctures slipped into cups discreetly, laughter and conversation flowing more easily under the poppy's influence. The ritual feels harmless because it is ordinary. Tea has always been comfort, civility, the anchor of the day. Adding medicine seems no more unusual than adding sugar, yet each drop carries weight. The body learns to expect it, the mind leans upon it, the hand reaches for the vial as naturally as for the teapot. And soon, the ritual is no longer about tea, it is about the tincture, cloaked in the gentlest of disguises. You finish your cup, setting it carefully back upon its saucer. The vial remains on the table, half empty, its glass catching the fading light. Rain continues to patter against the window, the clock ticks on, and the room feels softer, quieter, less sharp. You tell yourself you were only taking tea, yet deep down you know it is the tincture that has shaped this calm, the unseen companion that turns every sip into something more than a simple drink. The knock at the door is soft but steady, the sound of a cane tapping lightly against wood. The household stirs at once, for everyone knows what it means. The doctor has come. His visits are part ritual, part performance, a moment when sickness is acknowledged formally, when remedies are prescribed with the weight of authority. You rise from your chair and open the door, letting in a figure cloaked in black, his hat damp with fog, his bag heavy at his side. He enters with quiet dignity, the smell of the street still clinging to his coat. His eyes sweep the room, settling on the patient, your mother, pale and wan beneath blankets, her breathing shallow, her hands trembling faintly. The doctor sets his bag on the table, snapping open the brass clasps. Inside gleam instruments of glass and steel, small vials lined like soldiers, powders folded into neat envelopes. The sight alone brings a hush, as though healing itself has stepped into the room. He takes her pulse, counts her breaths, peers at her tongue beneath the lamplight. His words are calm, measured, though laced with certainty. Nervous exhaustion, he declares, or perhaps lung weakness, or a disordered stomach. The terms are vague, yet spoken with such gravity that none dare question. He listens to the cough, nods, and reaches into his bag. Out come the bottles: laudanum for the pain, chloral hydrate for sleep, a tonic of coca wine for strength. Each is presented with a brief explanation, but never with warning. To him, these are tools, as ordinary as bread or water. You watch as he measures a dose, the spoon steady in his hand. The bitter scent of opium fills the air, followed by the sharp sweetness of chloral. He mixes the medicine into a cup of warm tea, stirring until the liquid is smooth. He lifts it to your mother's lips, his voice soothing, urging her to drink. She obeys, grimacing at the taste. But soon her eyes soften, her breathing steadies, her body loosens. Relief spreads through the room, and everyone exhales as though a burden has been lifted. The doctor does not linger. He closes his bag, snaps the clasps shut, and scribbles notes on a scrap of paper, doses to repeat, drafts to collect from the chemist. His fee is placed discreetly on the mantel, coins glinting in the firelight. He bows slightly, adjusts his hat, and steps back into the foggy night, his cane tapping away down the cobblestones. When the door closes, the room feels different. The bottles remain on the table, their contents glistening in the lamplight, silent promises of comfort. Your mother already drifts into deeper sleep, her face calmer than it has been in days. The family whispers their gratitude, convinced that healing has begun. Yet you cannot help but notice how quickly the relief came, how complete, how heavy. The bottles stand ready for the next dose, their power undeniable, their danger invisible. The doctor's visit has left more than medicine, it has left trust, binding the household to the vials and powders that will soon become part of daily life. And in the quiet that follows, you realize that sickness may fade, but the remedies themselves will remain, their place secured in the rhythm of the home. The fog is thick tonight, curling low along the alleys of the East End. Gas lamps flicker weakly, their glow swallowed by soot and smoke, leaving long stretches of darkness between patches of light. You follow the narrow lanes deeper past shuttered shops and damp brick walls stained with years of grime. Somewhere ahead, a door creaks open and the faintest tendril of smoke escapes, heavier, sweeter than coal. You know you have found it, the place whispered about in markets and taverns, the opium den. Inside, the air changes at once. The room is dim, lit by lanterns whose flames tremble behind sooty glass. The smell is thick and cloying, a mixture of burning resin, sweat, and damp wool. The walls close in, low ceiling beams blackened with soot, curtains drawn tight against the street. In the corners, men and women lie sprawled on wooden bunks, their faces slack, their eyes half closed, their breaths shallow. The only sound is the occasional cough, the scrape of a pipe being lit, the faint sigh of someone drifting deeper into dream. You move further in, stepping carefully over bodies already sunk into oblivion. A man in a stained coat reclines on a bench, pipe in hand, the long stem glistening with oil. He inhales slowly, holding the smoke until his chest heaves, then exhales in a stream that curls upward like incense. His eyes flutter shut, and a faint smile spreads across his lips. The pipe passes to another, who takes it eagerly, already trembling for relief. The den keeper watches from the shadows, a figure with sharp eyes and quiet steps. He tends the lamps, stokes the fire, ensures the pipes are filled with the dark resin. Coins clink into his hand, and in return he offers escape an hour, a night, sometimes more. For those who enter, he is less a merchant than a gatekeeper, guiding them from the cold streets into a world where pain and hunger no longer exist. You take a seat near the wall, the wood rough beneath you, and watch as the smoke thickens. It clings to your clothes, seeps into your hair, makes your skin feel heavy. The haze grows deeper, the room softer, the edges of voices blurred. It is easy to see why so many come laborers broken by long shifts, women numbed by grief, sailors chasing away the memory of storms. Each draws on the pipe, each exhales, each drifts into the same silence. Time here loses its order. Minutes or hours might pass, you cannot tell. The den is a place apart from the city outside, a place where the clamour of London fades to nothing. Yet beneath the quiet there is something haunting. Some of those who lie motionless will not stir again, their sleep too deep, their breaths too shallow. Others will wake only to return the next night, and the next, bound more tightly each time. When at last you step outside, the fog of the streets feels cleaner than the air within. The lamps burn faintly, carriages rattle past, and the city breathes its restless rhythm once more. But the memory clings, the smoke, the silence, the faces lost in dream. London's heart beats loud and fast, yet hidden in its veins lie these dens, places where the poppy's shadow blooms, feeding dreams while stealing lives. The lamp burns low on the desk, its circle of light trembling across scattered papers. Ink stains the poet's fingers, the nib of his pen worn from hours of scratching against parchment. Outside, London hums with carriages and footsteps, but here the room is hushed, heavy with the scent of smoke and the faint sweetness of something stronger. On the corner of the desk sits a small glass bottle. Its contents are dark red-brown, half empty, its cork worn smooth. This is not merely medicine, it is companion, muse and chain. The laudanum poet bends toward it, as though toward a confidant. He unstoppers the vial, the smell bitter and metallic, laced with the ghost of wine. A spoon is measured, the liquid poured into a teacup already half filled with cooling tea. The mixture swirls together, dark and glistening. He lifts it slowly, drinks, and waits. At first, there is only the familiar bitterness clinging to his tongue. Then, as minutes slip by, warmth spreads through his chest, his shoulders loosen, and his mind seems to open like a curtain pulled wide. Words begin to move differently now, Sentences that had been stubborn all evening slip free, lines of verse flowing into his mind as if whispered by invisible voices. He writes quickly, the pen scratching faster, his hand barely keeping pace. Images bloom vivid on the page, gardens of impossible flowers, cities built from dreams, stars singing their silent songs. The laudanum does not simply ease his pain, it creates a world where pain itself can be reshaped into beauty. Around the city, other writers lean on the same ritual. They praise the poppy as doorway and guide, confessing in their books to visions wider than the waking mind could hold. Some are hailed as geniuses, their works celebrated for their strangeness and depth. Others slip into obscurity, their pages filled with dreams too fogged to be followed. Yet all share the same companion, the brown vial sitting patiently at their desks, whispering inspiration in exchange for devotion. The poet pauses, hand trembling, breath shallow. He reads over the lines he has just written, his eyes shining with a kind of fever. He believes them to be his best, his truest, the work that will outlive him. The laudanum tells him so, wrapping him in its warmth, convincing him that the words are immortal. But when morning comes, and the haze lifts, he may find the pages incoherent, or worse, empty of the brilliance he thought they carried. Still, by then it will not matter. By then he will already be reaching for the bottle again. The lamp sputters, the oil nearly gone, the room grows dim, shadows deepening on the walls. Yet the poet continues to write, lost in his dream, every drop of ink pulled from the same source as every drop of laudanum, dark, bitter, irresistible. Outside, London sleeps uneasy beneath its fog, but here a single man chases visions across paper, his mind carried by the poppy's tide. And as the night stretches on, the bottle gleams faintly in the lamplight, silent and steady, waiting for the next verse, the next sip, the next surrender. The parlour is warm with firelight, though the woman seated near the hearth shivers still. Her gloved hands twist restlessly in her lap, her gaze fixed not on the flames but on the small table beside her. Upon it rests a slender bottle, its label curling at the edges, the words promising calm, balance, relief. She has been told she suffers from nervous complaints, a term spoken by doctors with gravity yet vagueness, covering everything from sleeplessness to sorrow. The cure, they say, is simple. A daily tonic, sipped discreetly, as ordinary as tea. She lifts the bottle, its glass cool against her palm. Inside, the liquid glows faintly amber, sweetened and laced with opium or coca, depending on the maker's hand. She pours a measure into a small crystal glass, the liquid thick and glistening. The scent rises sharp, almost fruity, yet beneath it lurks the unmistakable bite of the apothecary. She hesitates only a moment before raising it to her lips. The taste is syrupy, heavy with sugar, but the bitterness hides within, waiting. She swallows, and at once the warmth begins to spread. Her shoulders ease, the tightness in her chest loosens, the endless flutter of her thoughts slows, like a bird settling its wings after frantic flight. She exhales, long and trembling, as though releasing days of tension in a single breath. The firelight seems softer now, the shadows gentler, the silence no longer oppressive but companionable. Her husband, reading quietly across the room, glances up and sees her smile faintly for the first time in weeks. He nods with satisfaction, convinced the tonic is working just as promised. This ritual repeats in countless Victorian homes. Bottles of nerve tonics sit on mantels and dressing tables, their labels adorned with grand claims, restores energy, quiets the mind, soothes the spirit. Women, particularly those of comfort, are prescribed them as readily as tea or port wine. Doctors encourage their use, assuring husbands that such remedies will ease their wives' restlessness, their melancholy, their sleepless nights. Few speak of the ingredients aloud, though whispers in medical circles admit the truth. These tonics are filled with opium, cocaine, or chloral, drugs that calm not by curing but by binding. The lady sets her glass aside, the warmth lingering in her limbs. For a time, the ache in her heart is dulled, the weight of expectation lighter. She can smile through a visit, endure a dinner party, even laugh softly at her children's play. Yet when the effects fade, the shadows return sharper than before, and so the hand reaches again for the bottle, the ritual repeated until the glass becomes as essential as breath. The fire burns lower, the parlor grows quiet, save for the faint rustle of her skirts as she leans back, eyes half closed. On the table, the bottle gleams faintly in the dim light, its presence both comfort and chain. Tomorrow, she will pour another measure, and the day after that, until the tonic is no longer a prescription but a necessity. For in Victorian Britain, many women's burdens were carried not in silence alone, but in syrup poured nightly into delicate glasses, sweet enough to mask the shadow hidden within. The city smells of fear. The summer air is heavy, thick with heat and filth, the drains overflowing into the streets where children play barefoot. News spreads quickly, whispered from door to door, shouted from newspaper boys at every corner. Cholera has come again. Families glance nervously at their water jugs, their wells, their pumps, wondering if death itself is rising up through the very water they drink. Shops close early, taverns grow quiet, but one trade thrives: the sellers of cure-alls. In market squares and along narrow lanes, stalls spring up overnight, their tables stacked with bottles and tins. Labels gleam with promises: cholera conqueror, doctor, Simpson's universal remedy, the people's protector against pestilence. The voices of the hawkers rise above the clamor of the frightened crowd. They swear their syrups can shield the body from disease, their powders can drive out infection, their tonics can restore strength after the faintest sign of illness. Each pitch is loud, confident, theatrical, drowning out the whisper of dread that lingers everywhere else. You watch as mothers press forward, clutching coins in trembling hands. They buy vials of camphor drops, bottles of peppermint water laced with laudanum, syrups heavy with alcohol. Children whimper as spoonfuls are forced into their mouths, the bitter taste masked with sugar. Old men, hollow-eyed, sip from bottles that burn their throats, convinced the fire inside will chase away the sickness that lurks in the water. In alleyways, neighbors trade remedies: vinegar rubbed on the skin, mustard poultices tied to the feet, pills made of chalk and mercury, anything, everything to ward off the invisible enemy. The chemists' shops overflow. Their shelves are crowded with hastily printed labels, the smell of spirits and tinctures thick in the air. A clerk hands out powders wrapped in paper, warning to take one each hour at the first sign of cramps. Another sells chloroform mixtures for those too racked by pain to endure. The line stretches down the street, people desperate for a bottle, a packet, a shred of hope. Few ask what the remedies contain. In times of plague, hope itself is medicine enough. And yet, despite the endless cures, the funerals multiply. Coffins are carried through the streets at dawn, the mourners walking quickly, heads bowed. Doctors argue in pamphlets about miasma and contagion, about air and water, about whether cholera comes from the heavens or the drains. Meanwhile, the cure-alls keep selling, their makers growing rich while the poor grow weaker. The bottles promise life, but the graveyards grow crowded still. You pass through the market at dusk, the lamplight flickering on rows of glass bottles, their contents glowing amber, green, and gold. The sellers' voices are hoarse from shouting, yet still they call out, swearing salvation to any who will listen. Behind them, the city groans with sickness, the river carrying both commerce and death through its heart. When you return home, you set the jug of water aside untouched. On the table sits a small bottle you bought that afternoon, its label bright, its promise bold. You know it may do nothing, yet you clutch it as though it were a shield. In the silence of the night, as footsteps echo toward the graveyard, the bottle gleams in the lamplight, a fragile comfort against the shadow of cholera. The shop is quiet at dawn, the shutters still drawn against the street outside. Inside, the air already carries its strange perfume, sharp spirits, sweet syrups, the dry chalkiness of powders waiting to be ground. You stand behind the counter, sleeves rolled high, apron tied tight. You are the chemist's apprentice, and today begins as every day does, with the careful work of preparing medicines for the neighbors who will soon file in, their coins clutched, their hopes pinned on bottles and powders. On the shelves above you, rows of jars gleam in the dim lamplight. Some hold harmless herbs, chamomile, mint, fennel. Others are darker, tincture of opium, arsenic solution, chloroform sealed with wax. Each bears a handwritten label, each demands precision. The chemist trusts you to measure, to grind, to pour, though your hands still tremble at times with the weight of the responsibility. A spoonful too much, and comfort becomes danger. A draught too strong, and a child may never wake. The mortar and pestle wait on the bench, their surfaces stained with years of grinding. You tip in a measure of dried bark, crushing it into fine dust, the rhythmic sound echoing in the stillness. The smell rises earthy, bitter, faintly metallic. Next, you measure laudanum into a vial, watching the red-brown liquid swirl like ink in water. The cork presses in with a squeak, the string tied neat around the neck. You set it aside with care, ready for the woman who will come later, her nerves frayed from too many nights without sleep. The bell above the door rings, and the first customer enters, a laborer with soot still clinging to his clothes. He coughs into his sleeve, voice hoarse as he asks for a tonic. You prepare it quickly, brandy laced with bitters, a dash of coca wine for vigor. He drinks the first sip before leaving the shop, his eyes brighter already, convinced he carries strength in his pocket. You watch him go, the bell jingling faintly behind him, and return to your work. Throughout the morning, more arrive. A mother carrying a feverish child buys soothing syrup, her coins damp with sweat. An old man takes powders for his stomach, muttering thanks as he shuffles out. Each request is answered with a bottle, a packet, a spoonful. Each bottle fills the shop with new scent, clove, ether, peppermint, and always the heavy undertone of opium. You breathe it in as though it were air itself, your senses dulled by its constant presence. When the chemist appears at last, his steps slow, his spectacles glinting, he nods at your work. He inspects the rows of vials, the careful folds of paper packets, the neat handwriting on each label. "Well enough," he says, and turns to serve the next customer himself. You feel a swell of pride, though it is shadowed by unease. For you know that every drop you measured, every powder you folded, carries not only hope but danger. As dusk falls, you sweep the counter clean, the air still heavy with the day's perfumes. Outside, the city clatters on, but inside the shop, the bottles gleam quietly in their rows, waiting for tomorrow. You blow out the lamp, the smoke curling upward, and step into the fog with the weight of the day still clinging to your hands. You are only an apprentice, yet already you understand. In the chemist's shop, life and death are measured not in years, but in teaspoons. The clinic smells of carbolic acid, sharp and stinging, mingling with the faint copper tang of blood. The walls are whitewashed but stained in places, shadows clinging in corners where the lamplight does not reach. Patients wait on wooden benches, their faces pale, their bodies weary, each clutching hope that within these walls pain might be lifted. Behind the swinging door, in the room marked surgery, lies the newest marvel of medicine, cocaine. The surgeon stands ready, sleeves rolled, hands trembling not with doubt but with anticipation. In his tray rests a vial of clear liquid, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in promise. For centuries, pain has been a companion in every operation, endured with biting leather straps or dulled with whiskey. Now, a few drops of this solution, applied to the nerve or injected beneath the skin, can quiet pain into silence. A patient is brought forward, his face drawn tight with fear. A tooth rots in his jaw, blackened and throbbing, the agony written in every line of his body. He lowers himself into the chair, gripping the wooden arms, bracing for torment. But instead of the usual pliers wielded against screams, the surgeon takes a small syringe, draws up the liquid, and presses it into the gum. The man flinches at the prick of the needle. then blinks in disbelief. The pain is gone. The swelling remains, the tooth still rotted, but the ache that ruled his life dissolves as if it had never been. When the pliers close, he feels only pressure, not agony. His eyes widen, his grip loosens. He breathes for the first time in weeks without wincing. Word spreads quickly. Cocaine is hailed as a miracle, an anesthetic that banishes pain, a discovery that turns surgery from terror into science. Surgeons marvel at their steady hands unshaken by screams. Dentists smile as patients leave their chairs not broken but grateful. Even physicians prescribe it beyond the clinic, praising its power to revive the weary, to sharpen the mind, to lift the spirits of those fading into melancholy. But already shadows form around the miracle. Some doctors take the injections themselves, savoring the rush of energy, the brightness that follows. Others give it too freely, leaving patients restless, sleepless, eager for more. The line between cure and craving blurs quickly, yet the profession hesitates to question. Progress must be trusted, they say. Pain has been conquered, what cost could be too high? You watch as another patient takes the chair, a young woman pale with exhaustion. The syringe gleams again, the liquid clear as water, and soon her face slackens, her body loosens, her fear replaced with calm. The surgeon nods, pleased, his voice steady as he explains the simplicity of the process. But your eyes drift to the vial on the tray, its surface catching the lamplight. Such a small bottle, yet within it lies power to erase suffering, to tempt the weary, to bind the desperate. Outside the clinic, the city groans with illness, hunger, and toil. Inside, the air hums with excitement, with the belief that mankind has stepped into a new age. And yet, as the vial is returned to its case, you sense the truth whispered beneath the marvel, that even miracles can cast long shadows, and cocaine's glow may yet darken into something no clinic can cure. The kitchen is dim, lit only by the glow of the hearth and the faint spill of lamplight from the hall. Shelves line the walls, crowded with jars, tins, and bottles of every shape. Some hold flour, sugar, and tea leaves, others vinegar and oil. But mixed among them, almost indistinguishable at a glance, are bottles that carry far more danger: arsenic powders in paper packets, laudanum in brown glass vials, chloroform stoppered tight, carbolic acid for cleaning wounds and floors alike. In the Victorian household, poison rests beside bread, medicine beside mealtime. You lift one bottle and turn it in the light. Its label is plain, its contents clear, no more alarming than water. Yet you know it to be chloroform, meant for sick rooms or surgery, but just as easily spilled on a rag to bring silence to a restless child or a sleepless adult. Another bottle bears a bright label declaring it a rat cure, but inside is arsenic, its white powder easy to mistake for flour or baking soda. Many have made that mistake. The newspapers carry their stories: families struck down at dinner, the meal seasoned not with salt but with poison pulled from the wrong shelf. On the mantel above the fireplace sits a vial of laudanum, its cork worn from frequent use. It is called medicine, prescribed freely by doctors, but everyone knows its shadow. Too much for a child's cough, and breath may falter. Too many drops in an adult's tea, and the sleep may last forever. Yet still it sits in parlors and kitchens, as ordinary as sugar, as trusted as bread. Children in the house grow up with these bottles in plain sight, their dangers cloaked in familiarity. They learn early which drawers are forbidden, which labels are whispered warnings. Still, accidents happen. A child reaches for syrup and swallows poison instead. A weary mother, distracted, measures too much into the spoon. An old man, near blind, mistakes arsenic powder for his morning tonic. The chemist sells them all without question, and the home keeps them all within reach. The smell of the kitchen itself carries a reminder: vinegar sharp, spirits pungent, the faint sweetness of opium drifting from an uncorked vial. The odors mingle with the scent of bread baking, of broth simmering on the stove, a strange marriage of nourishment and danger. In this room, life and death share the same shelves, the same table, the same air. You step back, looking at the rows of bottles, each one gleaming faintly in the lamplight. They are tools, remedies, necessities for a household that must fend for itself in an age where illness lurks in every street and vermin in every corner. Yet you cannot shake the unease, the knowledge that every cure here carries its own curse. As the fire burns low, the kitchen grows colder, shadows stretching across the shelves. The bottles remain, silent and patient, their contents unchanged, their risks waiting. Tomorrow they will be used again for healing, for cleaning, for killing pests. But tonight, in the stillness, they stand as reminders that the Victorian home was never free of danger. Poison lived in the cupboard, beside the bread and tea, as much a part of daily life as hunger or sleep. The parlor is quiet, the fire burned down to faint embers, their glow barely touching the edges of the carpet. On the small table by the armchair rests a bottle, its glass dark, its label stained, the cork pulled loose hours ago. The room smells faintly of opium, bitter, metallic, sweet in a way that unsettles the stomach. A teacup sits beside the bottle, a spoon still resting within it, the dregs of laudanum clinging to the porcelain. In the chair reclines a figure, head tilted back, eyes half-lidded. The face is calm, almost serene, as if sleep has come at last after a long struggle. But the stillness is too heavy, the chest rising only shallowly, the lips pale, the hands slack against the armrests. Around the room lies the evidence of desperation, letters crumpled on the floor, a handkerchief damp with tears, the bottle drained too far. What began as a measure for pain, a comfort for restless nights, has become too much. In Victorian homes, such scenes were not rare. Doctors prescribed laudanum freely, chemists sold it without question, and households learned to lean upon it. For headaches, for grief, for sleeplessness, for the cries of children, it was always the answer. But the body, lulled day after day, soon demanded more. Drops turned to spoonfuls, spoonfuls to glasses, until the line between soothing and silencing blurred into shadow. The house itself seems to know. The clock ticks too loudly, marking each second with grim finality. The curtains stir faintly in the draught, their fabric whispering against the window frame. Somewhere upstairs, a child shifts in sleep, unaware of the silence gathering below. The air is heavy, thick with the weight of something irreversible. Laudanum overdoses crept quietly. At first, drowsiness, a head nodding, a hand loosening. Then breath slowing, the heartbeat growing faint, the body sinking deeper into stillness. Those who sat beside the overdosed often mistook it for deep rest, relief after hours of agitation. It was only later, when the breaths grew too shallow or stopped altogether, that the truth revealed itself. Many never woke, their end written in the bottom of a bottle that promised comfort. You stand in the doorway, watching, helpless. The embers glow faintly, the room unchanged, yet forever altered. The bottle gleams in the dim light, its dark glass reflecting the quiet tragedy it has wrought. You want to shake the sleeper awake, to call for the doctor, to undo the last swallow. But the silence grows heavier, pressing in, filling every corner of the room until it feels alive. Outside, the city continues as always. Carriages rattle, bells toll, vendors cry out in the streets. But here, in this quiet parlor, time has stopped. The laudanum overdose has claimed another life, soft and silent, leaving behind nothing but an empty chair, a half-drained bottle, and a room steeped in sorrow. The fire gutters out, the clock ticks on, and the house holds its breath, as though unwilling to disturb the stillness that has settled forever. The hall is crowded, the air close, with the heat of bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. Candles flicker along the walls, their smoke rising in wavering columns, and the wooden benches creak under the weight of families gathered to listen. At the front stands a man in a dark coat, his voice rising above the murmurs, his eyes shining with fervor. He is the temperance preacher, and his words cut through the air with the weight of conviction. He speaks not only of drink, but of destruction, of gin-soaked fathers stumbling home, of mothers dosing children with soothing syrups until they never wake, of households broken by bottles sold as remedies. His voice trembles with both sorrow and fire as he recounts the deaths written in newspapers, the lives ended in backrooms, the fortunes squandered in taverns. "What good," he cries, "is medicine that enslaves? What blessing is wine that deceives? What salvation lies in powders that poison and in draughts that destroy?" The congregation shifts uneasily, some nodding, some lowering their eyes, all of them carrying stories that echo his words. You sit among them, the wooden bench hard beneath you, the preacher's voice echoing through your chest. You remember the smell of laudanum in your own home, the way it calmed grief but left silence too heavy to bear. You recall the gin shops on every corner, their doors swinging wide even at dawn, their patrons already glassy-eyed. The preacher's words are not distant, they are familiar, drawn from lives like yours, from streets you walk every day. On the wall behind him hangs a banner, stitched in red thread. "Temperance is salvation." It sways faintly in the draught from the door. The preacher gestures to it as he paces, his steps steady, his cane tapping against the boards. He speaks of virtue, of strength, of bodies freed from the grip of poison. Yet beneath his fire lies compassion. He does not condemn the poor who turn to draughts when hunger gnaws, nor the women who sip tonics for sleepless nights. Instead, he condemns the sellers, the profiteers, the makers of cures who know too well the chains they forge. The crowd murmurs as he raises a small brown bottle, identical to those sold in every apothecary. He uncorks it, the bitter scent of laudanum drifting even to the back of the hall. "This," he declares, "is no cure. This is no blessing. This is the slow death of our people, sold drop by drop, spoon by spoon, until lives are wasted in silence." His hand trembles as he sets it down, but his voice grows stronger still. Some rise to their feet, shouting their agreement. Others sit in silence, their eyes lowered, unwilling yet to surrender the comforts that ease their daily burdens. But the preacher continues, his voice a tide that does not ebb. He speaks of children saved when bottles are thrown away, of homes restored when taverns are left behind, of futures waiting beyond the grasp of poison. When the candles burn low and the hall empties, his words linger. The streets are still lined with gin shops, the chemists still selling their syrups, the bottles still hidden in drawers at home. Yet for tonight, the preacher's voice echoes in your mind, a call that refuses to fade. In an age where every cure carries danger, he offers something different, not a draught, not a tonic, but a vision of freedom, carried not in bottles, but in conviction. The streets are plastered with paper. On brick walls, on fences, on the sides of carriages, the colors leap out: reds, blues, golds, letters so bold they seem to shout above the clatter of hooves and wheels. Posters promise health, vigor, and long life. Their illustrations gaudy with smiling families, rosy-cheeked children, and men standing tall, canes held high in triumph. Dr. Bateman's pectoral drops, restores breath, revives the weak, Carter's little pills for all ailments, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for quiet nights. The city itself feels like a gallery of cures, each competing for the eye, for the coin, for the trust of the desperate. You pause at a poster nailed to a post, its edges curling in the damp air. A woman is drawn reclining in a chair, her eyes closed in perfect peace, a bottle on the table beside her. Above her floats the promise, one sip, endless rest. You know the truth that the bottle is laudanum, that the peace it gives is heavy and dangerous, but the poster does not admit this. Its colors are bright, its message simple. In a world filled with sickness and hunger, people want to believe. At every corner, advertisements speak in voices louder than the preacher, more persuasive than the doctor. They call to the poor with words of hope, pennies spent for comfort, a spoonful for strength. They call to the wealthy with elegance foreign lettering, imported glass, gold foil labels that gleam in the lamplight. Some promise to cure coughs, others to soothe the nerves, still others to restore youth itself. The ingredients are rarely mentioned, hidden in Latin words or not named at all. Behind the bright ink lies the same shadow: opium, cocaine, alcohol, chloroform poisons dressed in finery. Children tug at their mothers' hands when they see the drawings, smiling babies cradled in mothers' arms, their eyes closed in perfect sleep. The women glance at the posters with longing, remembering nights filled with cries, days filled with exhaustion. The choice is easy. A bottle of syrup that promises silence feels more like salvation than danger. Men, too, glance at posters promising vigor, their bodies worn by endless labor, their pride bruised by weakness. They believe the words restores strength, revives manhood, heals all complaints. And so the bottles sell, one after another, their cost paid in coins now, in health later. Printers grow rich on these advertisements. Their presses never stop, rolling out sheets by the thousands, each more colorful than the last. The chemists display them proudly in shop windows, the drawings brightening even the dimmest streets. The voices of sellers are multiplied in paper and paste, their promises shouted silently from every wall. As you walk, the city itself seems to speak, its walls alive with cure-alls. The clamor of advertisements mingles with the cries of hawkers, until hope and desperation are one chorus. You know the dangers hidden beneath the paint, but still, the images catch your eye, their simplicity tugging at your heart. For in a world where sickness is constant and doctors expensive, the posters do more than sell medicine, they sell belief. By the time you reach home, the images are still with you. The woman in her chair, the baby in its mother's arms, the man standing tall with cane in hand, they linger in your mind like prayers painted in color. And though you tell yourself you will not be fooled, you know the next time illness strikes, the memory of those promises may guide your hand to the chemist's shelf, searching for the very bottles you swore to avoid. The station is alive with noise, the shrill whistle of engines, the hiss of steam, the clatter of boots on stone. Smoke hangs low beneath the iron arches, mingling with the smell of coal and damp wool. Travelers hurry past, clutching bags and bundles, their faces weary from long journeys or anxious for the ones ahead. Amid the din of announcements and porters' calls, a small refreshment stall gleams with bottles lined neatly in rows. Their labels are bright, their promises bold. Railway tonic, strength for the weary, energy for the road. You step closer, drawn by both curiosity and fatigue. The train you have just left rattled for hours across the countryside, every jolt leaving your bones aching, your head heavy. The tonic seems to answer that ache before you even taste it. The stall-keeper pours a measure into a glass, the liquid dark and syrupy, its scent heavy with grapes and something sharper beneath. He smiles knowingly, assuring you that no traveler endures the rails without it. A sip, and you'll feel new again, he says. You lift the glass and drink. The taste is rich, wine-like, but with a bitterness that lingers on the tongue. Within minutes, warmth spreads through your chest, your fatigue lifting as though shaken off like dust. Your pulse quickens, your eyes sharpen, your body no longer weighted by hours of rattling travel. You stand straighter, the noise of the station suddenly clearer, the bustle almost invigorating. The tonic has worked its spell. Around you, others do the same. Gentlemen on business drink quickly, then stride off toward their next connection with renewed energy. Women sip delicately, their cheeks flushing, their eyes brightening as though the fog of exhaustion has lifted. Even porters, their hands rough from lifting trunks, take a glass between shifts, their laughter louder afterward, their steps lighter. The tonic fuels them all, a secret engine within the great machine of rail travel. The truth lies in the ingredients: coca leaves laced with alcohol, perhaps a touch of opium, all blended into a syrup that feels less like medicine than magic. Advertisements pasted along the station walls boast of its virtues. Prevents fainting on long journeys. Revives the exhausted traveller. A glass before departure, a glass upon arrival. The railway companies do not forbid it. Some even encourage its sale, knowing it keeps their passengers content, their complaints fewer, their spirits lifted. Yet beneath the rush of strength there is unease. The quickened pulse beats too fast. The mind races. The body feels restless. Long after the train has gone, those who drink too often find themselves craving it, their journeys unbearable without the tonic's fire. What began as comfort becomes necessity. A bottle tucked into every traveller's bag, a sip taken not for need but for habit. You watch as the stall-keeper fills another row of glasses, coins clinking into his hand as fast as trains arrive and depart. The tonic gleams in its bottles, dark and tempting, promising to turn every weary journey into something manageable, even pleasurable. You glance once more at the poster on the wall, a smiling traveller stepping confidently from a carriage, bottle in hand, and you realize the tonic has become as much a part of the railway as the steam and the smoke. As you step back into the foggy platform, the warmth still humming in your blood, the rails seem less daunting, the miles ahead less long. Yet you know the truth. It is not strength that carries you forward, but a drink sold for pennies at the station. A tonic that binds the journey to the bottle as surely as the engine binds the train to the rails. The great doors creak as they open, their iron hinges groaning against stone. A draught of cold air rushes past you, carrying with it the smell of damp plaster, disinfectant, and something sharper, the scent of medicine, heavy and sour, clinging to every corridor. You step inside the ward of the lunatic asylum, the place whispered about in hushed tones beyond its walls. The gas lamps flicker faintly, their glow casting long shadows along rows of iron beds. On each bed lies a figure, some restless, some still, their faces pale and drawn. The silence is not natural, it has been created. At the nurse's station sits a tray of bottles, their labels handwritten: chloral hydrate, bromide of potassium, tincture of opium. Each has been poured into cups or spoons, administered with steady hands, transforming the chaos of the ward into heavy quiet. The patients lie beneath the weight of the drugs, their bodies subdued, their voices stilled. Once, the halls echoed with screams, with muttering, with bursts of violence. Now the only sounds are shallow breathing and the shuffle of footsteps on stone. You walk slowly, the floor cold beneath your boots. At one bed, a young woman lies with her eyes half open, lips moving faintly, as if reciting prayers no one can hear. A nurse adjusts her blanket, then moves on without a word. At another, a man stares at the ceiling, his gaze fixed, his hands twitching weakly against the restraints at his wrists. The medicine has calmed him, but it has not freed him. It is not healing that fills the air here. It is management, control. The asylum physicians believe in order, in quiet. To them, opiates and sedatives are tools as essential as locks and keys. A patient who thrashes is given laudanum. One who weeps is given chloral. One who refuses food is coaxed with coca tonics. Each body is adjusted like a clock, wound down or wound up according to the doctor's will. In journals, they write of progress, of science triumphant over madness. But in these wards, the reality feels different. You pause at a window, its glass clouded with frost. Beyond it lies the asylum yard, high walls enclosing it, bare trees scratching the winter sky. A few patients shuffle there under watchful eyes, their movements slow, their steps heavy. They are not madmen in chains, as the public imagines, but they are not free either. The medicine keeps them docile, their lives measured not in hours or days but in doses, each cup a marker of time. A bell rings faintly, and the nurses move with practiced rhythm. Another round begins. Bottles uncork, spoons clink, bitter draughts are pressed to reluctant lips. Some resist, but only weakly. Most accept the medicine without protest, their bodies too dulled to fight. The ward falls into its rhythm once more, the silence renewed, the control maintained. As you leave, the heavy doors close behind you with a final echo. Outside, the city bustles with life, oblivious to the stillness within those walls. Inside the asylum, the ward breathes quietly under the rule of tinctures and tonics, its silence both mercy and prison. And in that silence lingers a truth. The drugs do not cure, they only hush. The parlor is dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon glare. The air is heavy with coal dust and the faint scent of medicine, sweet and bitter at once. In the center of the room, near the fading warmth of the hearth, sits the invalid's chair. Its frame is sturdy oak, its cushions worn thin, the fabric polished smooth by years of use. The chair has become more than furniture. It is a fixture, a throne of frailty, a place where days and nights blend into one another. In it sits the invalid, wrapped in a shawl, their face pale, eyes shadowed, hands trembling faintly on the armrests. The body has grown too weak for labor, too fragile for walks, too tired even for conversation. Instead, the hours are measured by the bottles on the side table. A vial of laudanum, half empty, glimmers in the dim light. Beside it stands a bottle of tonic wine, its label boasting vigor and restoration. A small glass rests ready, spoon beside it, as though the chair itself demands these companions to complete its ritual. The invalid lifts the spoon with difficulty, tilting the dark liquid into their mouth. The bitterness makes them wince, but soon warmth spreads through their chest, easing the gnawing pain in their stomach, loosening the tightness in their breath. The body relaxes. The shadows in their mind lift, if only slightly. Around them, the room softens, the tick of the mantle, clock gentler, the flicker of the fire steadier, the silence easier to endure. Family members pass quietly through the room, speaking in hushed tones, as though the chair commands reverence. Children tiptoe past, glancing nervously at the bottles. The spouse straightens blankets, adjusts pillows, ensures the medicines are within reach. Visitors whisper their sympathy, speaking of the invalid's courage, though their eyes always drift toward the vials, their colors glowing like strange jewels in the half-light. Everyone knows the chair has become both prison and sanctuary, its occupant bound not by ropes, but by the slow chains of dependence. Beyond this house, countless others hold the same scene. In city parlors and country cottages alike, invalids sit by firesides, their chairs surrounded by bottles of morphine, laudanum, chloral, or coca wine. Doctors prescribe them freely, calling it comfort for the incurable, mercy for the suffering. The sick are not expected to recover, only to endure with as little pain as possible. And so the medicines flow, drop by drop, spoon by spoon, until the patient and the chair are inseparable, bound together until the very end. The fire dies low, the shadows stretch across the walls, and the invalid drifts in and out of heavy sleep. Each waking moment begins with a glance toward the table. Each sigh ends with the touch of the bottle. The chair creaks softly as they shift, the only sound in the still room. Outside, the city bustles with life, trains rattling, carriages clattering, markets roaring. But here, time is slow, measured only by doses and by the gentle rocking of the invalid's chair. And so the evening passes, the house hushed, the chair steady, the bottles waiting. The fire will be stoked again, the spoon lifted once more, the night carried forward in silence. The invalid's chair remains, as it always will, a monument to both comfort and captivity in a world where medicine offers not cure, but the soft promise of forgetting. The bottle is small, its label crowded with words that promise everything. Chlorodyne cures coughs, soothes pain, quiets nerves, relieves diarrhea, restores sleep. The paper is yellowed at the corners, the ink smudged from years of handling, but the promise still gleams. One medicine for all afflictions. It sits on the mantel, as though it belongs there, beside the clock and the candlesticks, part of the household's quiet rhythm. You take it down, the glass cool against your palm. The liquid inside is dark, almost black, thick as syrup. The cork pulls free with a faint sigh, and at once the scent rises sweet, heavy, edged with something sharp and chemical. You pour a spoonful, watching it cling and shine, then swallow quickly, grimacing at the bitterness. The taste lingers on your tongue, but soon the warmth begins to spread, a steady tide washing through your limbs, softening every edge. Chlorodyne is no ordinary syrup. It carries a mixture known too well to the chemists: chloroform, morphine, cannabis, and a blend of spices to disguise the bitterness. It is lauded in advertisements as miracle and progress, a bottle that holds answers to every complaint. Doctors prescribe it freely, families buy it readily, and patients turn to it with the trust of the desperate. In the pages of newspapers, testimonials declare it to be salvation itself. In the quiet of homes, it becomes something else: a gentle fade, a soft curtain drawn across the day's suffering. You lean back in your chair, feeling its weight lessen beneath you. The cough that plagued you all morning slips away, the ache in your stomach forgotten. Your mind, restless and sharp with worry, slows into a calm drift. The fire flickers, its glow blurred, the clock ticks faintly, each sound softened. You are not asleep, not awake, but somewhere between. Chlorodyne has taken hold. Across the city, countless others share this same ritual. Mothers give it to children whose fevers will not break, grateful for the silence that follows. Travelers sip it to ease the cramp of long journeys. The elderly keep it close at hand, finding in it a companion for lonely nights. Even soldiers, returned from war, reach for the bottle to hush the pain that lingers long after wounds have healed. Its reach is vast, its embrace constant. Yet behind the promises lies the truth known in whispers. Too much, and the gentle fade becomes something final. Too often, and the body forgets how to rest without it. Dependence creeps quietly, as steady as the syrup itself, until the hand reaches for the bottle not in need but in habit. Doctors begin to notice patients who cannot rise without it, who cannot eat or sleep or live unless the dark liquid passes their lips. The spoon rests on the table, sticky with residue. The bottle gleams in the firelight, its contents lower than yesterday, but still enough to carry you through the week. Outside, the fog thickens, swallowing the lamplight, the city humming faintly in the distance. Inside, the world grows soft, every thought blurred, every pain dulled, every burden easier to bear. And as your eyes grow heavy, you think of how simple it is: a cork pulled, a spoon filled, a swallow taken. The day fades gently, the night rises quietly, and Chlorodyne waits, patient and unyielding, ready to carry you once more into its dark, forgiving silence. The house is quiet now, too quiet. The laughter that once filled its rooms has long since faded. The footsteps that once echoed on its stair now only memory. In the parlor, the widow sits by the window, her shawl pulled tight, the world outside a blur of rain streaking down the glass. She has worn black for months, yet the weight of mourning feels heavier than cloth, heavier than anything her body was built to bear. On the table beside her rests a small brown bottle, its glass dulled by touch, its cork loosened by use. It was the doctor who first left it, pressed gently into her hands after the funeral. "A few drops in tea," he said, "to help you rest." But rest is not all it offers. The widow learned quickly that laudanum is more than sleep, it is escape. It softens grief, dulls memory, blurs the sharp edges of sorrow. What was once a measure to close her eyes at night has become a ritual that carries her through the day. She pours a spoonful into her cup, the liquid swirling dark against the pale tea, disappearing as though it were never there. She stirs slowly, the spoon clinking against porcelain, her movements practiced, precise. The first sip burns faintly, the bitterness hiding beneath sugar, but soon the warmth spreads through her chest. Her breathing steadies. The tightness behind her eyes eases. The house around her, so empty, so cruelly silent, grows softer, less accusing. Her children worry. They whisper when they visit. their eyes drifting to the bottle on the table, their voices lowered as they wonder how much she takes. They remind her to eat, to walk in the garden, to join them for supper. She smiles faintly, promises she will try, but she knows the truth they cannot understand. They carry their grief differently, shared among families of their own, scattered by the demands of work and life. She carries hers alone, and the bottle is the only companion that does not leave her. Outside, the church bell tolls the hour, its sound muted by the rain. She closes her eyes, letting the laudanum carry her back to memories less sharp, her husband's hand on hers. Evenings by the fire, laughter spilling like light across the room. For a moment, he is with her again. For a moment, the emptiness is filled. She knows the visions are fleeting, knows they are born of poppy and not of truth, but still, she clings to them. Reality offers nothing as kind. Neighbors murmur that the widow is fading. They see her walk less, speak less, eat little. They say she is consumed by sorrow, though they do not see the bottle that sits always within reach. In truth, it is not sorrow that consumes her, but escape chosen, swallowed, spoon by spoon. Each dose pulls her further from the sharp world into one where the ache is dulled, where the memories are softer, where loneliness does not bite so deep. As night falls, she lights no lamp, letting the fire sink into embers. The house is shadowed, hushed, yet within that hush, she finds a strange comfort. The bottle gleams faintly in the half-light, steady as ever, waiting for her hand. And she knows tomorrow, and the next day after, she will return to it. For in a life emptied of companionship, laudanum has become her only solace, her widow's escape from a world too sharp to face alone. The morning is grey, the air damp with mist, the church bell tolling slow and heavy across the narrow streets. Outside the small terraced house, neighbors gather in silence, their eyes lowered, their hands clasped. The door opens at last, and two men step out, carrying between them a small wooden coffin. Its size makes the breath catch in your throat. No larger than a bread box, no heavier than a child's weight. It holds what once was laughter, what once was life. Inside the house, the smell lingers still, the sharp sweetness of syrup, the faint bitterness of opium mixed with milk. On the mantel sits the half-empty bottle of soothing syrup, its label bright, its promises bold. Calms all distress, brings quiet sleep. The mother had poured it faithfully into teaspoons, desperate for silence during nights filled with coughs and wails. At first, it seemed like salvation. The child slept soundly, the house finally quiet. But in time, the silence grew too deep. One night, the breathing slowed, then faltered. By dawn, the child would not wake. The mother sits in the parlor, shawl drawn over her head, her hands trembling in her lap. She does not cry now, the tears are gone, emptied during the long night of watching. The father stands stiff by the door, his face pale, his jaw clenched. He blames himself for the coin spent at the chemist, for the trust placed in a bottle that carried poison masked as medicine. Yet blame changes nothing. The coffin has been nailed shut, the child inside forever stilled. Outside, the neighbors whisper. They have seen this before, babies quieted by syrup, infants soothed into silence from which they never return. Some shake their heads in pity, others in judgment. But all know the truth. The poor have little choice. Doctors are costly, remedies expensive, sickness constant. A bottle of syrup that promises relief for pennies is temptation too strong to resist. And so the cycle repeats, children hushed, then lost. Funerals carried out at dawn to the toll of the church bell. The coffin is set upon a cart, its wheels creaking as it rolls down the cobblestones toward the churchyard. The mother follows slowly, her steps unsteady, the father at her side. Behind them trail neighbors, their silence heavy, their own children clutching their skirts. The procession is short, the graveyard close, yet each step feels endless. The bell tolls again, deep and final, its sound folding over the little coffin like earth already falling. At the grave, The coffin is lowered, the soil damp, the spade striking with dull thuds. The priest speaks softly, his words swallowed by the mist. The mother leans forward, her hand outstretched as though to cradle the box one last time. Then the earth covers it, shovelful by shovelful, until only a small mound remains. A wooden marker is set at the head, a name carved in haste, already weathering in the damp air. As the mourners leave, the parents linger. The bottle of syrup waits still on the mantel at home, a reminder of both the comfort and the curse it brought. The mother's hand presses to her chest, as though to still the ache inside. The father's eyes remain on the mound of earth, silent and hollow. And in the mist that clings to the graveyard, it seems as though the silence of the child lingers too, a silence born not of peace, but of a teaspoon poured too often, too easily, from a bottle that promised quiet and gave only death. The pamphlet is thin, its paper cheap, its ink smudging at the edges. Yet when you unfold it beneath the weak glow of the lamplight, the words leap like fire. Protect the innocent, regulate the trade in poisons. Such pamphlets have begun to appear across the city, handed out in markets, tucked beneath doors, left on pews after Sunday service. They carry the voice of a growing movement, the reformers who cry out against the silent plague of Victorian medicine. You hear them first in the halls, their voices raised above the murmur of debate. A woman stands at the podium, her dress plain, her manner fierce. She speaks of children lost to soothing syrups, of mothers grown hollow-eyed from laudanum dependence, of men brought low by tonics that promised vigor and delivered ruin. Her words echo against stone walls, carried on the breath of conviction. Each sentence is punctuated with gasps, nods, murmurs of agreement. Some frown, shifting uneasily in their seats, unwilling to see in their own homes what her words reveal. But the cry is clear. The time for silence is over. In the streets, reformers shout their cause from wooden crates. They hold up empty bottles as evidence, their labels still bright with false promises. Crowds gather, some scoffing, some cheering, some clutching their own bottles tighter as if afraid to let them go. The reformers speak of regulation, of new laws to label poisons, to forbid the sale of opium and arsenic without warning. They speak of doctors held accountable, chemists restrained, families protected. Hope stirs in the crowd, though it is mixed with doubt. You walk past a meeting held in a dim chapel, the pews filled with working mothers and fathers. A preacher's voice trembles with urgency as he describes the graveyards filling with small coffins, the nights silenced not by healing but by overdoses. He raises his hand, fist clenched, and declares that no more children should be sacrificed for the profit of chemists and the ignorance of the poor. The congregation murmurs their assent, some weeping openly, others glaring with anger. They leave the chapel clutching pamphlets, their hearts alight with the conviction that change must come. But resistance waits, strong and wealthy. Manufacturers print their own posters, mocking reformers as alarmists, insisting their medicines are safe, that only misuse brings harm. Doctors bristle at the idea of oversight, unwilling to see their authority questioned. And many families, too dependent on their bottles, prefer denial to surrender. The reformers' cry echoes against these walls of resistance. Yet still, it grows louder. You return home with a pamphlet folded in your pocket. Its words linger in your mind as you glance at the mantel, where your own bottle of laudanum sits, its glass glinting softly in the firelight. You think of the stories told, of children hushed forever, of lives ended too soon. The cry of the reformer feels close now, not distant, not abstract. It speaks to you, to your home, to the bottle within reach. Outside, the fog presses against the windows, but beyond it, voices rise, pamphlets spread, meetings swell, sermons thunder. The reformers cry into the night, demanding that the city listen, that the government act, that the bottles lining every shelf be seen not only as comfort, but as danger. Their cry is not yet law, not yet victory, but it is no longer silence. It is the sound of a world beginning to question the poisons it has long called medicine. The house is still at last. Curtains hang heavy against the windows, keeping out the pale morning light. The fire in the grate has long since gone cold, its ashes scattered grey and lifeless. In the parlour, the chair stands empty, the shawl folded neatly across the arm, as though waiting for its owner to return. On the table beside it rests a single bottle, small and brown, its cork pressed tight, its label faded with time. It is the last thing left, the quiet remnant of a life lived in doses and draughts. The family moves quietly through the rooms, their voices hushed, their steps slow. They straighten the books on the shelves, fold away the garments, close the drawers that once held handkerchiefs and letters. Yet they leave the bottle untouched. It sits where it always sat, as much a part of the household as the clock on the mantel or the lamp by the door. To move it would feel wrong, almost irreverent. For years it was constant, called upon in moments of pain, of grief, of restless nights. Now it waits in silence, its contents half drained, its purpose ended. You draw near, the glass cool beneath your fingertips. You remember the way it was used, spoonfuls stirred into tea, drops measured carefully or carelessly, depending on the night. You recall the bitter scent that clung to the air, the hush that always followed. The bottle was both comfort and chain, its presence both blessing and curse. And now, with its owner gone, it has become relic, testimony, witness. Outside, the world carries on. Carriages rattle, factory whistles shriek, newsboys cry the day's headlines. Advertisements still plaster the walls, promising miracle cures in bright letters. Chemists still line their shelves with laudanum, chloral, chlorodyne, each bottle gleaming in lamplight. But here, in this house, time has paused. The bottle left behind is not miracle nor promise, it is memory, heavy and unspoken. Neighbors whisper when they visit, their eyes drifting to the small vial on the table. Some shake their heads in pity, others in recognition, for they too keep such bottles in their homes. They know how easily it becomes part of life, how quietly it claims its place, how difficult it is to let go. They know the weight of the silence that follows. The children linger in the doorway, uncertain. To them, the bottle has always been part of their parents' routine, as ordinary as tea or bread. They do not yet understand its shadow. They only know that the chair is empty, that the room feels different, that something has ended. The bottle sits before them like a question they cannot answer. Evening falls, the lamplight glowing soft across the table. The bottle gleams faintly, untouched, unneeded. Tomorrow, perhaps, it will be thrown away, its contents poured into the earth, its glass discarded. Or perhaps it will remain, pushed into a drawer, hidden but never gone. Either way, it will carry its story within it, a story of comfort, of dependence, of nights eased and lives shortened. For now, it waits in silence, the bottle left behind. A final reminder that in Victorian homes, medicine and poison were never far apart, and that every remedy carried with it not only relief, but an echo, one that lingers long after the hand that reached for it is gone.